Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. He sees a squirrel.
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions.
No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I'm not drafting him.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. The draft is over. Months and months of work and effort and blood, sweat, tears, and clicks and watches is behind us, and it was all a waste because we had no idea what was happening at any point in time. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. Cam Ward goes number 1 overall. The draft was chaos. Mel Kiper probably is retiring. There's a lot to get to, and we're going to react to it.
Mel Kiper almost killed someone on set.
Dude, I am so... We'll get to that when we get to the Browns. I think we should hold off on that until Shedeur and that whole ordeal. Give the people something to listen to. That said, it's time to grade. It's time to just discuss, and everyone says that you have to wait 3 years to grade a draft class. No, we're going to grade it now. We're going to look at consensus. We're going to look at our boards and just how we feel about picks. Did they address need? Did they get taken at a good value? Are they just a good pick there? Oh, and who else was available at that pick? That was the third thing I was missing.
Yes.
So need, value, who else was available at that pick? And then we give grades to players, and then we collectively give grades to teams. We each came into this with our own rankings, our own grades. And they're all very different. Ryan, for instance, we'll just talk about we're doing it in school, like schoolhouse lettering. Ryan has 8 B's. Tyler has 6. I have 6. Tyler has 8 B pluses. Ryan and I have 2 and 3. So our grading scales are a little different, and how we feel about these guys is a little different. I mean, the scales is the same, but like our analysis is different, and that's why we're going to get into this. Let's start at the top. Let's just start really easy. 1-1 was Cam Ward to the Tennessee Titans. They didn't stay. They didn't move. They stuck to their guns. They took a quarterback. I gave this grade a B+. I gave the pick a B+. I feel like that's pretty... It's good value. It's who you wanted. But it's not that great. Like, it could have been better.
I think the term you're looking for is lackluster.
Yeah, that's a fantastic term for that.
Still has a poor wide receiver room. I gave him a C+ because they addressed all their needs. But the lackluster was they reached on Oladejo. And I thought he could have fallen to the 3rd round, but they took him there in the 2nd. So not anything noteworthy.
The Oladejo one for me was really tough because the next picks were Benjamin Morrison to the Bucks, Anthony Belton to the Packers, Trey Harris to the Chargers, and Tate Ratledge to the Lions. All guys that I had ranked higher than Femi Oladejo, and they needed. Right?
And that also, next edge rushers were Mike Green, Landon Jackson, Princely Umanmielen, Jordan Birch. There were guys left.
And at positions of need for the Titans,
those are just edge rushers.
They definitely need more offensive linemen, even though they did address it a little bit in free agency. They definitely need wide receiver, as Ryan talked about. And so I think that was what really killed me because I like Kevin Winston Jr. that they took in the 3rd round, right? Chimere Dike has some special teams upside, even if you didn't play him at receiver. Alec Iomanor, at least relative to consensus, that's a good value pick. But that 2nd round pick just was a little inexplicable to me.
Yeah. Before we move on and like talk about other teams, Cam Ward, right? Tyler, where did you have this graded, and just how did you feel? It felt like a no-brainer selection, but he has been, since Trayvon Walker, the least talked about 1-1. And I don't want to just brush the kid off because now he's an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, if I had to grade just that pick alone, I think it would be a B, just because I think it's justified to take Cam Ward as the number 1 pick when it comes to QB value. I had him 11th on my board, and so I think because he's a quarterback, makes total sense to take him at 1. But he's not this slam dunk, this Trevor Lawrence level prospect, and so it's not going to be an A for me either.
Yeah, Ryan, and you said you gave Ward specifically what, a C+, a B-?
I'd give the class a C+. I think Ward alone would be B-, a ballpark B range is a fair evaluation. I would have traded down. I think I've talked about it multiple times.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But, dude, if you looked at the Giants' offer, it was enticing. And I would probably wait on that for at least a week or 2 before declining that. But
what was the Giants' offer? Sorry, I didn't see. Did somebody report like an alleged offer?
I would have to find it again, but It was their pick this year, a pick next year, and I think a third somewhere trickled in, which I like because it's the Giants. You can always trust that that would be a high pick in the draft.
I mean, not if Cam Ward pans out, which I'm guessing Tennessee is kind of betting on because they took him.
Well, they don't have it anymore because they gave it up in the Jackson Dart trade.
Fair.
Which,
I really,
boy, will we get to.
yeah, I'm sure. I kind of liked Tennessee's draft. I gave it a B overall. I think I'm the highest of the three of us. I
Two
like
C pluses and a B.
Yeah. I like Gunnar Helm. I like A.O. Manor. I like the fact that this technically doesn't count, but I'm counting it because it helps my argument. Xavier Restrepo off the UDFA market. I love that. Love that signing for them. Kevin Winston Jr. was one of my favorite safeties in this class, and they got him in the third round, which I think it's interesting. I think Winston was right before some other safeties and some other players of note. But I do like the value. I do think that he has real boom or bust potential, and Tennessee's clearly betting on the boom. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this team, dude, let's just start with the Travis Hunter trade. Out of nowhere on draft day, I was just sitting here watching the draft, and out of nowhere, James Gladstone, the new GM for the Jacksonville Jaguars, trades up from 5 to 2 with the Cleveland Browns to get Travis Hunter for a haul, a quarterback-sized haul of draft picks. Let's just grade the trade before we move on. That was insane, first off. It was the ballsiest move I've seen from anybody, and it was by a 34 GM who walked in and punched the biggest guy in the schoolyard.
I think it's an A for both teams, and that is an underrated answer. I think that I might be in the minority because I think for the Jaguars, it addresses need is primarily.
Their two biggest need was corner and receiver, and
Yeah.
Travis Hunter is
And it
both.
gets it in one. I think for the Browns, though, I like getting an extra first there. It allows you to move down, still get a guy like Mason Graham. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I don't see any downside to this trade. It is why I give it an A. I think it works out for both sides. Great. Cleveland still had a need at D tackle that fills that. Might have not been Travis Hunter, but oh well. We still all had Mason Graham, I think, top 5.
I think so, yeah. But you're right, Ryan. It is a weirdly collective win for the two of them that I don't think people are like, they're like, oh my gosh, Travis Hunter. Oh my gosh, the Browns got a haul. No, both teams came out on top of this one. The rising tide lifted all boats.
Yeah, because now the Jags, even without their first, still have 9 draft picks in next year's draft. So it's not like they completely mortgage their future to get this. It is obviously when you're trading first, and they traded a second as well in this draft. Like, that's a lot, but they have some on the back end to where even if worst case scenario, like maybe he just can't play football tomorrow, like you do have some protection on that back end. And I think he plays wide receiver for the Jags because all the smoke was that Liam Cohen wanted to get his offensive weapon, and people thought that might be Ginty. They thought it might be Teteroa McMillan. It ended up being, I think, Travis Hunter. So just me looking at the pairing of Hunter and BTJ, that's terrifying for defenses. Like, the vertical ability that you have with both of those receivers to get down the field in a hurry, have great ball skills, but then they can also run good routes in the intermediate area. That's terrifying to defenses, completely shifts the field. So I loved this trade. I gave this trade an A just for that, paired with the Travis Hunter pick.
Yeah. And Travis Hunter gets an A just because he was the best player on my board, and they got him there, and he's a position to be. You know what? A+. A+ for just the selection of Travis Hunter getting to there. The only real risk is that he doesn't pan out, and then you have one player who is also 2 players who fail and bust, and that is the worry, right? That's the risk you're taking here. You're giving someone a massive workload and saying, "Don't fail. Our team is in your hands." They also took Caleb Bransaw in the third, along with Wyatt Milam. Love that selection. Fantastic value there with Milam out of West Virginia. Bashaw Tootin, running back in the 4th, along with Jack Kaiser. I feel like Gladstone came into this draft just knowing what he wanted to do and just got his guys across the board.
Yeah, it's a little surprising that they were actually able to keep this trade quiet for so long. It was reported that they had it done, I think, a few weeks ago. But because we were drafting Mason Graham in our mock drafts to the Jaguars, and they didn't address D tackle, I do still have some questions about their front 7. But
They didn't address D tackle or tight end after losing Evan Ingram to the Broncos, which I think is two things that's the reason they don't have an A+ for me. They're at an A-, right? Just a position of need that they didn't get to addressing. Where are you guys on this team?
I put B+, honestly, kind of the same thing, like the Hunter pick, really like the Milam and the Tootin pick. Kaiser, I did not think should go in the 4th round, but that's kind of nitpicking at that point. So I think overall they had a pretty good draft.
Yeah, very solid B.
All right. Jackson Dart. Well, okay. The Giants took Abdul Carter at 1-3, and then Jackson Dart, they traded back into the first round at 125 to get the Ole Miss quarterback. And then they had Darius Alexander, Cam Scatterbo, Marcus Mbow. They've had a really, without the Jackson Dart selection, it's a fantastic draft. Tyler, where are you now that they have the Jackson Dart selection?
Oh, man. They just couldn't help themselves. Huh? I wrote this down in my analysis. I would have given this draft an A because I, capital L, love all of their picks. Carter at 3, no-brainer. Darius Alexander falling to the 3rd. Great pick.
Huge.
Thought he was a second-round pick for sure.
The chemistry
Scatterbo.
that he's going to have with Dexter Lawrence, he fits their defensive line perfectly.
Exactly.
so
You got a guy that can eat up space, and Dexter Lawrence, he can also gap shoot as well, but he's just the best defensive tackle probably in the league. So,
Yeah.
Right, good. But Alexander, I think, does pair really well next to him. Scatterbo, awesome running back, and awesome change up from what Tyrone Tracy does. Marcus Mbow, I thought he was a 3rd or 2nd round pick. He fell to the 5th, great value. But they had to trade up for Jackson Dart. It's just, this is Daniel Jones 2.0 for me, man. Like, I don't get it. I don't see it. He was a day 3 guy in my eyes. And then you give up more picks to go get him. It's just, for me, if I'm a Giants fan, I'm just going, man, it's another ride on the roller coaster where we take a guy who kind of has mid tools and doesn't actually have this amazing potential, but also is not really sharp on the details. Like, that's just Daniel Jones, and it's in a little bit of a different font because they're not exactly the same, but I just really don't like that trade. And so because of that, overall, it's a C+, even though, again, honestly, if you take that out, I probably would have given this draft an A.
So the Jackson Dart trade and selection moves this from an A to a C+ for you?
Yes, you gave up more draft capital.
Wow.
To take this guy who I think is just not going to be a very good starting quarterback. And then now you lock yourself into where 2026, you're not taking a quarterback. 2027, you're not taking a quarterback because you have to wait it out because it's a 1st-round quarterback you took. So all that put together, I don't love it.
Watch him say this now, and then in our fantasy league, he'll take Jackson Dart at
Imagine.
the late 1st round, early 2nd.
Tyler,
105.
when do you take Jackson Dart in our fantasy league? It's a 12-team tight end premium super flex for those who care.
Yeah, I mean, he would be probably like a late 3rd, early 4th type of guy. Because at that point, you're just taking dart throws. And if he's going to be a guy that they're going to try to start, like, that's worth it in the late 3rd, early 4th.
If you want to hear more dynasty rankings, come back next week where we will break down our dynasty rankings with all of these rookies and the best ones on offense, and also Travis Hunter, to draft in your dynasty leagues when you're doing redrafts, and we'll talk about overall fantasy value as well. I gave this grade an A- because I love everything they're doing besides the Kenny Pickett's Jackson Dart. Sorry, wrong guy. The Jackson Dart selection. I love it. I think every pick was the right move. In Jackson Dart, I get where they're coming from. I get why they did it. I think the just limited amount of quarterbacks is what screwed them. Ryan, you're shaking your head?
B-, could have waited for a quarterback next year. You already had a subpar quarterback room. It wasn't going to get any better. Now you have to probably either trade DeVito or cut him.
Cut DeVito. He's not a needle mover for me.
Cut
You get a
DeVito,
6th round pick for him, though.
But dude, forget waiting till next year. You could have just waited to the 2nd round of this year. Like,
Yeah.
there was
You
not that
likely
much
could've.
difference between Dart and Shuck for me. So
I
why
would-
not honestly, I had Shuck higher than I had Dart. Like, just take Shuck.
I am curious to see what would have happened if the Giants did not trade up there to the Rams spot. Rams
Houston.
spot. Was it Houston? Right, because the Rams traded with who did they trade? I'm forgetting who traded up for who. There's too many guys that got traded and too many things happened. But the Giants traded back up into the 1st round, and I'm curious to see what would have happened to Dart if the Giants hadn't made that move. Where does he fall? Do the Steelers or the Browns try and trade back up into the 1st round to try and get him? I think in their minds, if they didn't do that, they lost him. And he was their QB2 in this class. Which I think QB2 for Jackson Dart is not an overwhelmingly crazy thing, especially with what NFL teams told us about what they thought about Shedeur Sanders. The New England Patriots, let's keep it trucking. We got 32 teams to get to, and we are on number 4. The New England Patriots, I gave this draft a B. A lot of good selections. Nothing that really blew me away. I mean, Will Campbell, Travion Henderson in the first and second round, tackle and running back. The biggest thing I wanted to talk about was Kyle Williams, the Washington State wide receiver. Why?
Good pick.
Really?
Yes. Well, you guys are way lower than consensus on him, which doesn't mean you're wrong. I'm just throwing that out there. But
I just feel like that there were guys available where they took Williams, and they took Williams, where was it? 3-5, right? The 5th pick of the 3rd round, right ahead of guys like, granted, there weren't that many guys behind him, but Jalen Noel.
I was gonna say the one guy is Noel, which is why I gave them a B+. Honestly, this would have been an A for me if they would have taken Noel instead of Williams. But I think Williams is still a good player.
Do you think there was a part of them that thought that Noel would have been redundant with Demario Douglas, who I think right now is a starter for them?
Well, Kyle Williams is kind of redundant to Demario Douglas.
That's also fair.
Yeah. So I would have just gone with Noel. I think he's a better player. Williams ended up being, I think, a top either 60 to 70 player for me, and they took him at 69. And so I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But again, Noel, I think I had him at 39. And he was a guy that I thought was a 2nd round pick for sure. But we'll talk about later, ends up going to a cool spot. But man, is this a good Drake May draft, though?
It is.
And I don't know if you guys saw the Will Campbell interviews post-draft.
Yeah.
He's awesome, right? And Mike Vrabel wrestled with him. And so I'm just convinced that Campbell's going to be a good player now.
Which is interesting that Vrabel wasn't convinced by Will Campbell until Will Campbell came up and hit him with some pads on.
That's awesome. I love that. It's just great. And then you got a starting running back in Travion Henderson, and you allowed Ramondre Stevenson to be a change-up back. No, he doesn't have to be the number 1 anymore. I think you got a great 1-2 punch there. Jared Wilson, boom, that's your starting center. Joshua Farmer, potential D-tackle. Love it when you already have Barmore and Milton Williams, and so you get to see him develop. Braden Swinson, I thought he was the better of the LSU edges, guys, and they got him in the 5th round. Like, Marcus Bryant was another guy who I wrote down when I was watching Membu. Marcus Bryant was the left tackle from Missouri, and I was like, oh, there's something there in terms of just some good potential held up against Texas A&M especially. So I love their draft, gave them B+. They helped out Drake May a ton, and that was the goal of this draft, was get Drake May offensive line and get him weapons, and they did that.
I actually gave him an A-, and
so I'm the lowest with a B?
Yeah, I want to actually talk about Henderson. So one of the main talking points that we had was great at pass protection. And that's awesome for a 3-down back because the lack of pass protection in New England, this was just a great pick.
If the offensive line can't pass protect, draft a running back who can.
Yeah, I love Judkins better than I do Henderson. But for New England, Henderson was just a better fit. So I actually love it. Campbell will hopefully be a cornerstone player for them. But dude, Vrabel Air is off to a hot start. Solid A-.
I have it at a B. I think the biggest thing for me was they did not address receiver in a way that I felt was quality enough. Williams, for me, just doesn't hit. If they had taken a receiver in maybe the 2nd round instead of... Actually, I don't know. I'd maybe trade back up into the 2nd round near that Luther Burden range. I don't want to take Burden, but that was the range, like the Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins area. I think something like that could have got it into a B+, A- for me. But I have it right now to B. The Cleveland Browns.
Oh boy, we're going to spend 10 minutes on this one. Tyler set the timer.
Yeah. Okay.
Before,
You want to give each person like 2 minutes?
Well,
I'm just
before
gonna give us overall 8 minutes. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that works. Before we get to the man, the myth, the legend, legendary Shedeur Sanders, Mason Graham in the 1st, Carson Schweisinger in the 2nd, along with Quidjon Judkins, the picks 1 and 4 in the 2nd round. Harold Fannin Jr. in the 3rd, Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd as well, Dylan Sampson in the 4th. We're going to ignore their 5th rounder. Just with rounds 1 through 4. This is an A+ draft.
I wrote down the same thing. I said I was so close to giving this draft an A with the trade back that we already talked about, and you still get Mason Graham, who is a top 5 player. I liked pretty much all of their, but even the Gabriel one, I was like, okay, that's a little weird, but
it's good value.
Developmental quarterback, you can just toss him in there, whatever. Like he can be a backup for you for a couple years on a cheap contract. Maybe not exactly what I would have done, but I can at least see the process. Like I was really close to, besides that 5th round pick, giving this an A.
I don't understand of having 5 quarterbacks on a roster, but I guess Andrew Berry does. And so
I don't think
he's
Andrew
in the
Berry does either.
NFL, and I'm not. So there's that. But like we said earlier, I think the trade was amazing. So the Travis Hunter, Mason Graham trade. I didn't factor that in here, but I do love that. So I want that to be noteworthy. Uh, all great players individually, but there are some reaches. I think Gabriel was one of them. I was actually surprised that Schweisinger went that high, but I'm not mad about it because
It's
I
a thin
know for a
linebacker
fact
class.
that the Raiders were breathing down their neck at 37.
Yeah, and I
So-
was gonna say I don't know because then if you don't take him at 33 or 36, he's probably just not gonna be there at 67.
Yeah. Loved the Junkins and Sampson pick because 2 top 50 guys, a team that just lacks talent, you need talent. So that can be a dynamic backfield for them. Fannin in Cleveland. Didn't really expect that.
It works,
but,
though.
Will be an interesting landing spot nonetheless.
Keep him in orange and brown.
And then, yeah, we said we're not talking about Shador just yet, but I think the roster got better across the board, but I do think you could have done much better with the players that were available.
I love Fannin next to David Njoku. I feel like they're 2 very different players, and they are going to play different styles, and that's fun for me. I have all of these guys, like every single one of these players is a B or a C. If it, like Dylan Gabriel's a C, Dylan Sampson is like a C for me because that's your 3rd running back. That means basically they're telling us Nick Chubb is gone. And then you get to Shedeur Sanders, and my grade for the Shedeur Sanders pick is LOL. I don't even know.
What really blew my mind is not even from a talent perspective, because taking Shador, who just on talent, take everything out, probably should have been a 2nd round pick.
Probably.
And taking that in the 5th round, sure. But what doesn't make any sense to me is when you talk about the trade back, I thought they were trading back to load up on picks to get a QB next year that you would invest in.
I think they are. That's the thing.
But then that's why it doesn't make any sense to take Shador Sanders. Even if you took Dylan Gabriel and still wanted to do that, but if you took Gabriel and still wanted to do that, like fine, whatever. He's going to be your backup.
Gabriel's a flyer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like again, not what I would have done if in that situation, but he doesn't actually change that plan. Shador, with the noise he brings as a backup quarterback, brings that to where it's just not as clean. And sure, you can move on from him, and we can just sit here and say, hey, Browns, just don't give into the noise and move on when you want to. But you still have to deal with that noise. Your locker room has to deal with that noise. And so I just don't understand why the Browns specifically did it. If another team said we are going to take a 5th round flyer on Shador, who probably, again, just on tools should have been a 2nd rounder, whatever, makes sense. Why, when I think your plan is to take a guy next year, are you doing that?
Here's my thinking, and I'm going to go in a little bit of a monologue here, so cut me off and use the Oscars playoff.
You got 4 minutes.
Excellent. Right? This draft, we just talked about it, from rounds 1 through 4 makes a ton of sense. Dylan Gabriel, if I am Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, I'm giving Dylan Gabriel the reins for 1 year. Say, hey, prove that you are a starter in this league, that you are a quality player, that you are a top 15, 20-ish player, and you could stay around. If not, we're drafting a quarterback next year with this haul we just got from the Jaguars. That's what they're doing. They're giving Dylan Gabriel 1 year to prove himself, but they have no connection to him. They have no contract that holds them in place to Gabriel, and that's a really good plan. 1 year of Dylan Gabriel, draft a quarterback, and then you have this team. You have a unit. Harold Fannin Jr., Quinshon Judkins, I'm blanking, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. That's a team. That's offense. Along with Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, Carson Schweisinger, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on defense. Like, this is a unit. If you just put a quarterback there, Kirk Cousins is looking unlikely. And then they got to the 5th round, and that's when the owner stepped in. Did you guys see the video of...
Yeah.
Ryan, did you see the video of Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski in the draft room after they drafted Shedeur? Yeah.
They look dead inside.
Dead inside. They are absolutely miserable. That is an owner phone call. Jimmy Haslam, I think is the name of the owner, called it in. He has a quote-unquote good relationship with Dion and Shedeur, and he just took Shedeur to be nice to Dion. That's all it is. He brought in Shedeur Sanders because he was like, this kid's been punished enough. And it's a waste of a selection.
That QB room's going to be punished.
Yes.
I hope they're on Hard Knocks.
Dude, it's absolutely...
I'll actually pay for it this year instead of just streaming it online.
Oh my gosh. But Drafting Shadur Sanders was an owner phone call that should not have happened and was a waste of a selection. And now, if you look at the 5th round, Shadur Sanders goes 144. Behind him goes Braden Swinson, edge rusher, could have taken him. Jadon Blue, Texas running back, could have taken him. DJ Giddens, another guy you could have taken. Jalen Rivers, Marcus Umbaugh, Jeffrey Bassa. All of these guys came right after Smile Munden Jr., Mitchell Evans, Yaya Black, Torrey Horton. All of these guys are borderline 3rd, 4th rounders that are going in the 5th that you could have taken instead of Shadur Sanders. You are hurting your team by putting your foot in the door as an owner and saying, do this because I want it. Your job is to own the team. It's not to run the team. You hired someone to run the team. Stay in your lane.
Stefanski will be on the hot seat this year.
That I disagree with. I think Stefanski and Barry are going to give Shadur the boot, and maybe not even I don't think he makes it. I think he makes the team because he's better than some of the guys on the roster.
You think he makes team over practice squad?
That's the question.
Well, he's making the team.
So there's I just saw it somewhere.
Deshaun Watson is on injured reserve because he's not playing this year. He's better than Dylan Gabriel is.
Okay, so our remaining minute, we're going to decide the 3 or 4 quarterbacks. So Flacco's going to be on there.
Flacco
there's-
on the roster.
The
All right,
Toronto
so now we got to
Argonauts.
decide between Gabriel, Pickett, and Sanders.
The Toronto Argonauts of the CFL have added Shadur Sanders to their negotiation list. In an event, Shadur decides not to pursue an opportunity in the NFL and chooses the CFL, the Argonauts have first chance to acquire him. So basically,
There we go.
their CFL has a bid.
He's declining that, but
He feels
he's-
insulted.
But Shador is better than Gabriel for
Yes.
sure. He's better than Pickett for
Agreed.
sure. So to me, it's him, Flacco, and then whichever those two guys beats the other out. I mean, which is
I'm
weird
not
'cause-
arguing with you. I'm just asking.
Yeah, which is weird though because they drafted Gabriel, which you would think would give him a leg up, but they traded a 5th for Pickett, and so it's like
So what happens
What?
if you?
Thank you again, by the way.
I don't understand it at all.
What happens if you
Yeah.
rearrange this class? Say you bump everybody
I
back
saw
one.
that.
No, if you draft Shadur with your 2nd, you take Carson Schweisinger at the 2-4, you take Quinshon Judkins at the 3-3.
He would last.
Who?
Judkins.
It's a hypothetical. That's the point here.
Hypothetically, it doesn't happen.
That's not how you're so annoying. Where would you grade the draft if it had happened though? If you put Shadur in the 2nd, does that change things?
No, because then I'm like, what are we doing with the picks we have? And then I guess you could say build around Shador, but then that's my other thing with this is I don't know if I want to build long term around him if I have the opportunity next year to trade up and get somebody that has a way higher ceiling.
The NFL told you they don't want to build around this guy. They told you they don't trust him. They told you that his antics are they're antics. They're not
If
fun.
NFL owners are literally calling their general managers and saying, take Sanders off of your draft boards, yeah, we got problems.
Did that happen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Who reported that?
I can find it for you, but it might take me a while.
Don't worry about it
We'll
then.
just trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is part of me, guys, that really I do feel bad in part for Shador because
He did this to himself.
all of the coverage was on him dropping and then the prank phone calls like that. That's the kind of stuff that I do feel bad.
Taking Cam Wart's moment.
Yeah, but that's not him though. Like he's not calling into ESPN being like, "Hey, I want to be on the draft show again, not being picked." You know what I mean? And so
Mel Kiper made this weekend worse for everybody else and I think for Shadur as well. So for those of you who, I don't know if you're listening to this pod and didn't watch the draft, I don't know what to do with you. But basically Mel Kiper Jr. went on, I think there's an 8-minute supercut that Warren Sharp posted of Mel Kiper talking about Shadur Sanders.
insane. And then what got me is Mel is like, you know who has no ideas about quarterbacks? The NFL. And like, while that's kind of true, you know who also has no idea about quarterbacks?
Mel Kiper. Mel freaking
Jr.
Kiper. What was it, Jimmy Clausen?
That's
was
the
his-
big one, but like go back to any year. I saw a graphic where he had Luke Falk, who you guys probably don't even know because he's a college football legend and put up stats at Washington State with Mike Leach. But he had him above Patrick Mahomes. He had, I forget who was in that class. He had Deshaun Watson
Mitch
behind.
Trubisky?
He had Mitch Trubisky 1.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson behind another guy and Mitch Trubisky, and then Mahomes at 5 behind Luke Falk. And so the arrogance to be like, hey, you know who actually has it figured out? Me, this guy on ESPN. That's no one has quarterback. No one has the draft figured out. No one has quarterback figured out.
He
There's
was
not this formula where you just plug it in and go, hey, it spits out this guy's going to be an all pro. It doesn't work like that.
he was having. I don't want to keep like dogging on Mel Kiper, but everyone else is talking about it. So, I'm kidding.
Apparently, the Eagles do. They have a QB factory.
We'll get to that. The fact that Mel Kiper had to get told down by Reese Davis and like basically was having a mental breakdown over a player not getting drafted,
Just unbelievably unprofessional.
Incredibly unprofessional. Shedeur Sanders, I do feel bad about the prank phone call. I don't feel bad about anything else. Him and Dion did this to themselves.
They overplayed their hand. I was in Indianapolis with family and we were talking about it. And I said, the comp is Caleb Williams last year. And his was not, I don't think as drastic of antics, but he didn't do the combine. He was very selective with interviews. There was talk about his dad being really, really handsy with him behind the scenes in terms of wanting him to go to certain things and only do certain things. But you know why Caleb Williams went 1-1? Because Caleb Williams had tools for days and put up stats at USC.
Wasn't he good in interviews too?
I don't know.
It was rumored he was good in interviews, whereas it's rumored that Shedeur intentionally tanked his interviews. I saw a quote on the internet, which is always true and never lies, that Shedeur, quote unquote, walked into interviews with cologne that was like choking the coaches.
That was a lie. That was.
You saw.
I saw it. It was all a lie.
Okay,
Someone made
great.
that up.
Then I'll ignore it and I'll redact what I said. But he was tanking interviews. That part was pretty clear. He was acting as if he was the best player on the planet. There was a complete lack of humility. In the combine, it was Shedeur walking around and his brother following him everywhere, filming everything, because the moments of Shadeur's life are meant to be legendary to Shedeur and his family. He's not just a kid, and he doesn't act like he's just a kid. There's a difference between him and a lot of the other guys in this class, and I think
we've totally gone over 8 minutes.
So did ESPN. The shortcomings of Shedeur Sanders were so magnificent compared to his lack of talent that NFL teams told you what they showed us what they thought about him, which was that he's subpar.
Is that you can do that when you're Caleb Williams, when you're Jaden Daniels, when you're Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. All those guys maybe didn't tank their interviews, and I guess we'll never know exactly how Shedeur interviews went. But they did the same things in terms of being selective, in terms of not doing stuff at the combine.
You say that, Tyler, though, but like 10 years from now, coaches that like get fired are always like doing these podcasts.
True,
and they're like, "Oh, back in the day, I was in that Shedeur Sanders interview."
So that's
what
true.
happened?
Maybe we will know at some point. But at least right now, I'm saying we don't exactly know what happened. But you can get away with that when you have the talent. And this whole time we were talking about how Shedeur was a second round talent just based off tools. So you can't get away with that kind of stuff. And they overplayed their hand. I think they thought they had it in the bag and they didn't.
3 rounds of attitude add on to that. And you get a 5th round quarterback who might not make the team. We have no idea. Ryan, just half the floor. Go on. It's the Raiders, dude.
Well, I'll make it short and sweet. B-. Genty, great start. Couldn't have gone better. I comped it there for a while. Now, second round, Besh, massive reach. And I can't put it in more bold font. Massive reach. Don't like it.
We were way lower
I like
on
the
him.
fit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the value. Probably could have still gone in the 4th round.
I wrote the exact same thing. I like how he fits in the role with the receivers they have, but I just never, like PFF had him at 35, I think, on their board. And there were guys that were a lot higher than we were, but man, I just never saw it. And so I'm with you, Ryan, where I just value-wise, that's a reach.
Defense was a problem all last season. They get Porter to fix corner position. Aaron, you actually put Will Campbell in our second mock. They drafted Rodgers and Grant to fill that need at O-line, all solid. Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, blazing, tall receiver that they just need to get vertical.
Take a shot.
And then, Geno will have a lot of fun with the offense, but huge miss in that second round. And then I wrote, likely saw Schweisinger off the board, and then they actually traded back. I don't know if you guys remember, in the early second to the Dolphins, who traded up to get Saviena. But Will Johnson, Morrison, all would have been a better pick at the second pick. So I'm little lost for words, just mismanagement with that second pick because
And the
I mean
third, in my opinion.
the third was all
You don't like
right.
Porter?
I don't like the fact that they could have gotten two corners I had better with the three. Like they had three corners available at that pick, and that was Porter, Thomas, Revel. And I liked both of those better than I liked Porter, and I think that was just a misuse of a pick. I had them leagues above where I had Porter.
Yeah.
And
So all around, kind of mismanaged the board, but the needs were there. So that's why I gave it a B minus.
I gave it a C plus for the same reasons. I didn't like the value. I didn't like some of the positioning, but I did like what they took in the draft, and I do like the fact that their roster is now fuller, and it is more deeper, more deep. The roster's better, plain and simple.
I did a little higher, B. I think the Genty pick really buoys it for me. I'm okay with Porter just in that range is the value. I had him, I think, in the
I
late
agree with the
50s.
range. It's just who was right behind him that bothers me.
Right. So I see what you're saying. Take two swipes at tackle because they, I know their right tackle spot is not completely locked down. Miller's on a contract year or whatever. And then I sneaky like JJ Pegues. I've said it kind of the whole process that I think he's got something there. So get him in the sixth round.
I got that a B minus. I like that pick as well.
Yeah, and just do some fun things. I even saw somebody being like, Chip Kelly's going to kill with Pegues, and then Tommy Malo is the quarterback from Montana State, who they run like a 2-quarterback offense. It's really fun, but can do a lot of running. So I think they can do some fun things on offense as well. So I gave this a B, mostly I just like that Genty pick.
Yeah, it was. I think Raiders, good job. You can be proud of this one, and then we're just gonna keep it trucking because that's basically it's simple. The New York Jets: Armand Membu, Mason Taylor, Azariah Thomas, Arian Smith, Malachi Moore. Love that one. And then two other guys in the 5th round that I honestly did not know.
Francisco Malinoa and Tyler Barron.
Thank you, Tyler. I gave this a B minus. I think it's a quality draft. I think they're addressing positions of need, but this is not a splashy one to in the least.
Yeah, I just didn't have a ton of notes on this. Membu and Olu at tackle, in theory, you lock down your left and your right tackle spot. Again, as long as they pan out, you get to keep Membu at right tackle. Boom. The Arian Smith pick, man, I did not understand that at all. I saw someone tweet the guy who does the consensus board and puts it all together, Arif Hassan. He was at like 257 on the consensus board, and he just can't catch or really run routes, and he's a receiver. And so that was one where I was like, I don't know who is that.
He was taken just a few picks ahead of Jalen Royals and Alec Manor, two guys that we've had much higher than him.
They're going to regret that.
Yeah.
We'll get to the Chiefs.
But they had some good value picks in there. I like Membu, so
I like Moore.
That's why I gave them.
I love the Moore
as
pick.
well. Yeah,
I gave it a B. This might be the quickest we go through a team, but it could be one of the sneaky good draft classes. And I was a little surprised. Not a lot of movement at the top in terms of trades, but they just took best player available on their boards and hit some needs. So solid B.
I think the biggest way that this pans out for everybody is if Mason Taylor is just a splash. If they can get a 10-year tight end out of this selection, it's a fantastic draft class. Plain and simple. The Carolina Panthers, this is going to be a lot longer of a conversation than the Jets and the Raiders.
Yep.
Starting with, I gave this class a B. I like it. I think it's quality. T-Mac, 1.8. Nick Scorton at 2.19. Princely Uman Mielen at 3.13. Really late for him. I did not expect that, but good value for them. Trevor Etienne at 4.12. Interesting. Lathan Ransom at 4.20. And then Cam Jackson, Mitchell Evans, Jimmy Horn Jr. rounding out their 5th and 6th rounds. All in all, I think they managed to hit all their needs and do a good job maximizing on value. And I didn't have much issue with it. I think the Uman Mielen pick and the Scorton picks and Ransom, those three are my favorite of this class with just getting good value and filling needs. That said, this is not the big crux of this discussion. The big crux is T-Mac. It's Teteroa McMillan at 1.8. Ryan, what was your grade for this class?
Okay, I actually have a lot of notes here, so bear with me. So first round grade alone, D, borderline D+.
Just McMillan.
For just McMillan.
Okay.
I love the idea of getting a wide receiver for Bryce that is a number one, but I think this is a evaluation dispute. As in, theoretically, from what I've heard, T-Mac was number 3 on the Panthers' big board. I had him.
I believe it was 22.
Yeah.
I have him at 20.
Oh, you moved him up. There you go.
So that's just an evaluation dispute. But if you remember, Canales coached wide receivers for 8 years. And word is that Bryce pushed for T-Mac. So
Good for him.
they,
Use
I
your
think,
leverage
had
as
a little
quarterback.
too much influence on that. But
The coach and the quarterback had too much influence on a receiver selection.
in a defense-heavy draft, yes.
Okay, I hear you.
He's not some top 10 prospect. If you're drafting in the top 10 and getting a wide receiver, he needs to be a top 10 prospect. That's just
They thought he
a
was, though.
moral
Didn't
thing
they have?
I can't do in my head. It
Didn't
just
they
can't
have him
make
at
it make
3?
sense. Yeah, and they had him at 3.
So aren't they following your rule?
They're following the board. That's why it's still D+.
Okay.
So that drops the grade down alone out of everything. I just can't get behind it, even with the fact more so that they had trades available, reportedly. Trade down. That just makes the most sense. But for the rest of the class, Aaron, I'll fire off. It was great. You got a pair of ends for the future, Scorton and Umamian, along with Lathan Ransom on the back end to address some needs. I actually saw that they traded up in the 4th to get ETN. Thought it was going to be a safety there because Billy Bowman was available. Instead, they get ETN. Wasn't really happy about that one, kind of mid. Apparently, he's going to be a kick returner, though, is what Panthers community says. Not the best running back on the board either, which is a little disappointing. But I really hope this class pans out because if not, they're setting the Panthers back years.
Yeah, they're screwed. Right behind ECN, and also in the 4th round, was Woody Marks out of USC, Jarquez Hunter and Dylan Sampson. Jordan James and Jadon Blue and DJ Giddens all went early in the 5th. So that's 6 guys. And I got to be honest, I would have taken 5, maybe 4 or 5 out of those 6 ahead of ETN.
Yeah, the one pick I really didn't like in their draft was that ETN pick. I mean, even Damian Martinez went the 6th, which I was way higher on him than that. But
Ollie Gordon in the 6th, too. Like, good players.
Love that fit with the Dolphins, by the way.
yeah, just I don't know. I just didn't love ETN through this whole process. Just a me thing. Gave this a B+ because T-Mac completes their offense. They now have him, Leggett, Coker, Thielen, some other guys on the back end of that wide receiver room.
Hunter Renfro.
Yeah, they did just sign Hunter.
Encyclopedia
Yeah.
salesman.
And then they have Hubbard at running back, Miles Sanders and ETN backing him up. So weapons-wise at this point, man,
Sanders is a Cowboy.
oh, sorry, yeah, he moved on. You're right.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So
I saw
Hubbard
that
and then
today
ETN.
he's on my fantasy team,
Yeah.
and I realized I need to cut him. Ryan,
And then they went. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
But
No,
just,
go ahead,
just
Ty.
to finish the thought, because the one thing was like, okay, the Panthers had the worst defense in the league last year. Like, where's the defense? Then after T-Mac, 5 out of their next 6 picks were defense, and so they really did address that. Love the Scorton and love the Uman Mielen picks specifically there. Even Cam Jackson from Florida, just a run-stuffing defensive tackle with Derek Brown coming off of his injury, give him maybe some snaps off. So really like what they did.
Yeah, Ryan, you said that you wish they had addressed defense in the 1st round. I'd argue they addressed it in the rest of the draft. Like, they took, instead of taking Jalen Walker or an edge rusher with 1-8, they took one with 219 and 313. And I think that pairing of Scorton and Uman Mielen, they're both in the same range for me.
I think they got lucky with how the board fell that way. But yes, they did
Luck
address the rest
But
of their
we're
needs.
grading what happened, and and they got it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Luck.
and that's why I gave it a B-.
I mean, I think all 3 of us have the Eagles as one of our favorite teams, and they got lucky. That's how this works.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. The best teams and the best drafters get lucky. The Titans got lucky that the Giants got hot at the end of the season with Drew Lock at the helm and got the 1-1. That's just how the draft works. That's how sports works, is you get lucky. The New Orleans Saints. I think this is one of our first, I don't want to say bad,
Failing.
but subpar classes. Kelvin Banks Jr. was their 1st-round pick. I think that was a good one. I like some of their other ones in Danny Stutzman, Quincy Riley, Devin Neal. I think those are good. But they also took guys like Tyler Shuck in the 2nd, which is very high. They took Vernon Broughton, who I don't think is a household name, to say the least. Jonas Sanker out of Virginia, a safety, where there were other safeties available there. And then I'm not even going to try for that kid out of UCLA, the tight end they took in the 7th, along with Fadil Diggs out of Syracuse. This class is just Calvin Banks and a whole bunch of subpar guys, and then also Danny Stunsman.
Tyler, I'll let you take this one so I can gather my thoughts.
Yeah. I gave it a C. Guys,
Same.
I'm just not on the Banks train. Like a lot of people pushed, I think, especially the end of this process, into that top 15 range. He was going 9 to the Saints, 10 to the Bears in these mock drafts. And I just can't get there. And so I could be wrong on that for sure, but that's just really high for me, especially when Simmons, in my eyes, is just way better and is moving and practicing again. So it seems like the patella is fine. So I just don't really get that. Like I even probably would have liked Connerly over him if you're going tackle. So I mean, the Shuck second round, like, hey, just try it, I guess. I don't really mind that. Really what saved this draft for me is, Aaron, what you talked about with the run of Stutzman, Riley, and Devin Neal. These are guys that I all really like, or that I like a lot.
I think we
And
both had them in our top, all 3 in our top 100. Or near
exactly,
that.
yeah. And so to get guys like that in the fourth, and sixth, I think really does, at least for me, save this and put it up to a C, even if I don't love the first 2 picks.
Yeah. There's not much to say. Ryan, but go ahead.
I think this is borderline failing. And I say this because you have one of the worst rosters in the league. And your goal is to draft for talent. And I think this does the exact opposite. So, first of all, I was much lower on consensus for Kelvin Banks. I actually had him at 33. So, huge reach. Shuck is 26 and will be 30 before he gets a second contract, if he gets a second contract.
Has only played 1 season of healthy college football.
And yet he's a toolsy and an athletic guy, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Broughton shouldn't have even gone in the first 4 rounds. So the only bright spots I see are Stutzman, Riley, and Neal, like we've already said. But best of luck, Saints fans. Buckle up.
It's brutal. They needed to nail this draft, and it is one of the worst that they have. Yeah. I gave it a C. Ryan, you give it what, a D?
D minus.
D minus.
This is, I think, one of the 2. No, this actually might have been my worst grade. I only gave out 3 Ds.
Yeah, this is your worst grade.
Yeah, this is. Oh my!
I just don't know, because I had Banks in the 30s too, and
I had him at 29. So
and
we're all in the same area.
I don't know. I guess I don't really know what I'm missing, but I just didn't love the player.
This is grounds to change your fandom.
Well, I don't know if it's that.
Saints fans, if you're hearing me now, we will accept you only for a week. After that week expires, we can no longer accept you.
Saints fans, the PLL is over the summer, and it's fantastic. Go watch lacrosse. The Chicago Bears have Ben Johnson-ified this draft, dude. What in the world happened? I'm in love. That said, I only gave it a C+.
So wait.
It hits all the happy Aaron. It hits the dopamine centers, but it's not filling. It's a lot of sprinkles, a lot of icing, and I feel like it didn't address their actual needs. Colson Loveland in the first round, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, we're going through this in the order that teams drafted their first round picks. Colson Loveland at 110, Luther Burden at 2.7. Those are 2, I think, very good values. But I don't think either one of those is a position of need, is the biggest issue. And the rest of their class is it's good. Like they had Ozzie Trapillo, that was a reach. Shamar Turner, Ruben Hippolyte. And I struggle with their back end of the draft. I feel like it's a bunch of Jags, just a guy, right? But I also struggle. Loveland and Burden, as fun as they are for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, it felt like they had a cupcake instead of taking their medicine.
Here's the phrase I put, and Aaron, you will know this one. Trust the process.
I hate you.
I see the vision. I'm genuinely hoping it pans out well, but lots of 12 personnel is coming their way. It's going to be a complete overhaul. So do not even think that the Bears offense that you saw last season is going to be the Bears offense this season. Buy in, buy now, trust the process.
What'd you give it?
Let Ben Johnson execute.
What did you grade it?
I gave it a B+.
B+? Okay. Tyler?
I was kind of
late round picks. I can't say anything on because, dude, I don't know who Luke Newman was, but
I don't either. Zoff Frazier, shout out. He ran a really good time and was really long. He's like 6'3" at corner, so maybe. I give this a B minus. It's just solid. I like these players and where they were taken because even Luther Burden, right, has some football character issues. How locked in is he?
But he's got juice.
But he's got juice. And so where do you take that?
Yeah.
In the second. Perfect. Colston Loveland, I like it because sneakily, I just think they might even kind of move on from Cole Kmet. But Cole Kmet's not.
Whoa! I need a good year out of him. I need to trade him.
I was
need
gonna say if they
Colston
drafted
Loveland.
Colston Loveland, man, I might move up off Kmet there, bud.
I need Colston Loveland to have a good year in 2 years. No,
Yeah.
I can't tell anybody why.
So he's fine. Like Cole, because I have Cole Kmet does not mean I won't draft a tight end in the first
Right.
round, basically. But I wrote down the same thing, Aaron. Like I really needed them to hit defensive line, especially. And while I like Shamar Turner in the third round, I kind of just wish they did that higher up. Burden, I think they're looking at as DJ Moore insurance, whether they want to re-sign him or not when that contract is up. I think they're very similar players, so they addressed some good needs. Trippier,
Similar.
again,
I mocked Burden to Moore every time I watch his tape.
Yeah.
They're not only similar. I feel like Burden models his game after Moore. Plain and simple.
Yep. And so I guess they didn't leave the D line completely empty, but just maybe wish they did a little more, and maybe with a little more premium picks. And so that's what made it a B minus for me.
The other position I wish they had addressed is running back. You're giving Ben Johnson now. He likes it to have his pairing, and he got instead Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers. Did I say that?
So this is not breaking news, but might be insider information. Was actually watching another radio show, and apparently Nick Chubb is talking to a NFC North team, and I was thinking that might be Chicago.
You know what? If Nick Chubb goes there, this draft just jumps up to a freaking B plus for me. I know he's not part of a draft, but that does change the needs, and which changes the draft. So that was interesting. I did wish they had done better at running back.
And I don't know. For me, it would have been cool if they gotten running back, but you can survive with DeAndre Swift. Like it's not, you don't have a bad running back if he's your starter. Now, is he mid? For sure. But it's not horrible.
Yeah. The San Francisco 49ers, speaking of not mid running backs, they have Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, we hope.
There's that. But they also took Jordan James out of Oregon. Great selection in the 5th round. And it's a string. The Niners had a fairly mediocre draft with, I think, 3 good selections. And that was Michael, Collins, and James. I know you guys are higher on CJ West than I am.
CJ West truthers.
I think this was just a pretty decent draft from the Niners. Nothing to write home about, though.
Fun fact, if you look at the NFL drafts team-by-team deviations from the consensus board, which is a lot of words to say, hey, did teams overdraft players compared to where they were on the consensus?
The grid with all the with all the plots and the teams on them?
This is a bar graph, but yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe they did it in that plot as well. The 49ers were actually the worst of all of the drafts, so I thought that was a fun fact. They reached a lot, and I think that's mainly Alfred Collins, but also Nick Martin, linebacker out of Oklahoma State. I was like, what the heck happened
in
there?
the 3rd.
Yeah, that was all I had to say.
Yeah, especially when Danny Stutzman was there, right? That's my main guy, but there were some other linebackers that went later.
Demetrius Knight was there.
He was gone.
Was he?
Yeah, because he went 49.
He went in the 2nd
Oh my gosh. Did
to
he
the
really?
Bengals.
But Stutzman was there. Even like I liked Shamar James out of Florida better than Nick Martin. Like there were just guys that you could have gone there. Kobe King, Barrett Carter, all these guys I liked more than I liked Martin. But CJ West saved it for me. No, honestly, I think we saw what their needs were. They needed defensive linemen. It's sneakily been crumbling for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And they put a lot of picks into it. Michael, Alfred Collins, CJ West, all defensive linemen and all really, really good run stoppers. And so I think that's what they're saying is, hey, we'll be able to get pressure with Nick Bosa. Hopefully Michael develops some pass rush moves. But at least for right now, dude, we are going to stop the run. And that's why I gave it a B minus is that I think they may have reached on some guys, but I see how it all came together. Also, I just like CJ West a lot. But
I ended up giving it a B minus as well because Michael was my number 2 edge rusher in the class behind Carter, and I think that was just good value with the selection. Ryan, what was your grade? And then after that, you want to just lead us into We Dem Boys?
Sure. C plus for San Fran. For Dallas, I gave them a B. And I don't want to admit it, but this wasn't a bad draft for Dallas. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
Well, sneakily, everybody gets on Jerry. They've drafted pretty well in the past 5 years.
I mean,
Now
there's
they
a
do the contracts all wrong, but
Zeke
Yeah,
Elliott, CeeDee
everything-
Lamb, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons. They know how to pick them.
Yeah, everything except the first round pick rubbed me fine. So Booker was way too high
Pause,
in my
dude.
opinion. Well,
absolute pause.
I'm
That's
not
crazy.
Justin Tucker, but I need to be very critical of this because they've now taken 3 first-round offensive linemen. That's just not how you build a team in today's age.
No, you build them
So-
with Tylers. That's how.
Exactly.
Yes.
Wasting picks. Like, come on. 3 first-round picks on offensive linemen?
Wait, what? So wait, hold on. You don't. So you're not even. You're just mad at the fact that they've taken 3 offensive linemen with first overall picks.
With their first round pick.
Okay, I think I disagree here. I mean,
You would
pretty much,
build that
yeah.
way?
I mean, like pretty
Look at
pretty
the
much
Eagles.
all
Look at the Lions.
for
I
a
mean-
while now. We've talked about building through the trenches, and
How,
I guess
how many first-round picks have the Eagles invested in their O-line?
That's a good point, actually. I
One?
was more talking about the Lions.
But they've also
Lane
invested
Johnson, 1.
They also have the
seconds as well.
Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson. That's fine. But this is a
Right.
first-round pick on Tyler Booker, who I forget where we had him on our consensus board, but he was in the 30s.
I was low on Tyler Booker until I saw the quote. Did you guys see
That
the
he
quote?
wants
The
to
video, yeah.
fight Jalen Carter? Yeah, have
No.
fun, buddy.
Not that one. He says that he has a quote where he wants to make people stop loving football. He wants to hit somebody so hard that he drains the football out of them.
he doesn't.
I love it. I hate that he's on the Cowboys. I also don't know if it was the best selection for them with what they need and what they needed. They also needed a receiver. They did not address receiver, which I think was the biggest need for the team.
I've seen
Which is
that
why I have it at a
Amari
C.
Cooper has been thrown in there.
Oh, come on. No, we do not.
I'm not saying that's smart, but
We didn't. Well, we don't use Amari Cooper in arguments that saying they fixed receiver.
anyways, the rest of the draft I think went very well. Spread the talent out. Ezraku and Ravel.
Fantastic.
I'm actually insanely jealous, but
Two
those
just
are
great picks.
phenomenal
Yeah.
picks. Cornelius was a once highly regarded prospect that fell, and I thought was a good pickup. But it's the
took
Cowboys,
Blue during
so
the
don't
run.
get your hopes up.
They took Blue during the run on running backs, and they keep a Texas guy in Texas, which they'd like to do. I think that was everything but Booker was really good.
Yeah. And I wrote this down, but I think there's certain position groups that go to teams where I kind of just err on the teams at that point. So a few I wrote down is just the Eagles with offensive linemen, McVay with QBs, and Steelers with wide receivers. There's a couple examples of, if a team picks at that position, I just probably am going to believe in that a little more because they've coached it up so well. And the Cowboys with offensive line over the past 10 years has been one of those. So while I guess relative to my board, I was like, Booker is kind of a reach here. It at least makes me pause. And so that's why I gave this draft overall a B as well.
I gave it a C because the lack of wide receiver really pushed it down for me. I think that was their biggest need, and they didn't address it. The Miami Dolphins. This is one of my least favorite classes of all. This is
We're going to be lock and step here.
Okay, I gave this draft a D+, which is I have
Same.
3 classes, D+, and D-. This is one of my 3 there. This is a D+. Kenneth Grant, 113. Jordan Savaniah, I think.
Jonah
Savaniah at guard in the second round. Crazy reach. Then they
traded up to get him.
traded up to get him, and then they had no picks from 2.5 to 5.5. And then from 5 in the 5th round, they took Jordan Phillips, Jason Marshall, a whole bunch of nobodies. Also, Ollie Gordon, like that one, and Quinn Ewers. This draft sucks. There's nothing to write home about except for Ollie Gordon, who's a 6th round running back.
Not great. Not great. Because I even wrote down for me, so Kenneth Grant at 13, defensive tackle's a need, but like Harmon, I just had better than Grant. Nolan, I also had better than Grant that were taken at 16 and then 21. When you get to Savaniah, it's not even, for me, I think he ended up being in the 60s on my big board. So, like, fine player, but a little bit of a reach, and guys that I had higher at that same position, Ratledge, Mbao, there's a couple other guys on the interior or at tackle you could have taken. And so with those top 2 picks, I think being such reaches and that there were other guys that were better at those positions, I gave it a D+ as well.
Yeah, this was actually my D question mark team. So I think it's absolutely a contender for one of the worst drafts. Grant, like you already said, massive reach. I'm not going to go into that. I don't really know what happens, and I really hope there's like some insider information on what happened in this draft room, or we somehow get a release of their big board because I think it was just an abysmal draft board all around. I don't even know if it was team need problem. I think this was just a bad draft board. When you're trading up into the early second round for Savienna, I think we have issues. So this probably goes down onto the scouts, but more so the GM, dude.
It
I don't
feels
know what happened here, but
it
the
feels like
one
they
bright
didn't
spot,
have any idea of how other teams felt about players.
yeah,
They felt their way and they didn't think about where anyone else had that, and therefore did not have a idea for value.
I really hope Ollie Gordon blossoms in Miami. This was an amazing fit, and it's the one bright spot I can really see out of this.
Yeah, but man, they have so many running backs like Achan,
He's gonna get
Wright
buried.
from last year. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, I don't know. And you said it perfectly, Ryan, when you said it wasn't that they didn't hit needs. I just don't think they were the players at the level for those needs.
I think that one of their biggest needs with the Jalen Ramsey question mark was also DB corner, and their two DBs that they took was Jason Marshall Jr. in the 5th round and Dante Trader Jr. in
Go
the
Gators.
5th round. Neither of whom I think are gonna ring the bell for me. The Colts had an interesting class. It is very top heavy, but it's also
Okay,
there's names.
sneaky good though all around the board.
Sneaky good. Sneaky good.
I have it as an A.
Whoa.
Whoa,
No notes.
I'm
I'm at
I-
a C plus. I think this is
I
our
am
biggest
also at
disparity.
a C plus. Wow, interesting.
Tyler, we're lockstep, dude, the whole time.
Yeah, this is interesting. So Ryan, I guess you go first.
All right, let me see where I had JTT on my big board. Okay, I had JTT on.
I
my
wrote
big
that
board
down.
at
The difference between
44.
A to C pluses are currently our biggest branch. I'm curious to see if how far that's probably gonna stay our biggest.
All right, so Riley Leonard, I actually like that. That gives
I did too.
Daniel Jones and AR-15 some good competition in there.
More than that, it feels like if the two of them had a child, if you meshed Daniel Jones and AR-15 together, you get Riley Leonard.
It is kind of funny. DJ Giddens, love that.
Good
He
pick.
will absolutely compete for the RB2 job. Look for Jonathan Taylor to get hurt. He would probably be the one to step up.
Yeah.
I'm going from the bottom up. Jalen Travis, when we did film, I briefly looked at him. It was nothing noteworthy, but it was nothing bad. So 4th round, late 4th round, not a bad pickup. Justin Wally out of Minnesota, also same thing there. That was probably my least favorite of these picks that I'm mentioning. But corner was always a need. And they finished 8 and 9 last year. I think they could have used some DBs, and this is just filling a need. JTT, like I said, was 44 on my big board. I love JTT. I think he will fit in great in Indy. On top of the fact that they got Tyler Warren at 14, they sat there at 14, stuck to their guns, and didn't trade up. It would have costed a ton to trade up to where the Jets were. That's where, for the most part, Tyler Warren was mocked for a while. So to sit there at 14 and have Tyler Warren fall in your laps, come on, guys. That is one of these sneaky good teams in the league, let alone this draft class.
I like the Tyler Warren selection. I think that for him falling to them was fantastically lucky. He is one of the best fits and one of the best selections in this entire class, hands down. Probably top 5 value to team to fit to selection, like all in all, top 5 picks. JT Tuamaloa was drafted at, what was it, 35 overall?
45.
45? 45.
Yeah, and I
45
have him
overall.
at 44.
I have him at 101.
Okay, that's a you issue.
No, it's a you issue. That's why I have this drafted at C+. It's you have Jalen.
That's what
Anyways.
you sound like.
I have this class at a C+ because they massively reached at a position of need, granted, on Tua Maloau. And then Justin Wally, Jalen Travis, neither move the needle for me. TJ Giddens, Riley Leonard do. I like those picks. And then they didn't do anything special. I also feel like they didn't address any needs at linebacker
Offensive line.
or offensive line.
It's fine. They had a multitude
No,
of
it's
needs.
not.
Aaron,
It's
they
not.
had so many needs.
Neither one of
They'll
the
fix them
quarterbacks-
next year.
Neither one of the quarterbacks that they are trying to build around, either Daniel Jones, now Riley Leonard, and Anthony Richardson, all three of them need a clean pocket. And you did not draft an offensive lineman.
Very tough
Alright.
also because they lost their center Ryan Kelly and then their guard Will Fries.
And Tyler Warren is not even the best blocking tight end in this class.
I really like Warren though.
I do too.
Because the RPOs I think with him are going to be awesome because it's stuff where you have Jonathan Taylor on the dive, you have Anthony Richardson able to run it, and then you also could toss it out to the flat with Warren. That is really good. I think Shane Steichen has worked very well with tight ends with this skill set in the past with the Eagles and Dallas Goedert. So great. I put JTT Sure. Like I'm lower on him. And I think the biggest thing for me is that Mike Green was still on the board, which we'll get to when we get to the Ravens. Just thought Wally and Travis were both reaches. I did like Giddens, so I just put it overall solid. Like I could maybe be convinced to make it a B-. That's fine, but C+ is where I landed.
Not only was Mike Green still on the board, so was Nick Gordon, so was Landon Jackson, so was Jordan Birch, so was Princely Uman-Bielen. At that point, I would have taken Jack Sawyer. I would have taken Baron Sorrell over JTT. Like that was a massive reach in my book.
I had Baron Sorrell at 41 and JTT at 44, so I'm not going to give him crap for that. But sneaky good, guys. Sneaky good. Just watch.
I think it's just plain bad. Mediocre at best. I have it C+, so barely above passing. Falcons had a draft of 5 total players, but I think 4 of the 5 are fantastic. The question is need. Did you need 2 edge rushers and to trade back into the first round to get the second one? At 115, they got Jalen Walker, who is one of our favorite players in this class. Tyler doesn't like him, but Tyler's wrong. And then they got James Pierce Jr., who is a speed rusher out of Tennessee. At 126, they traded back up with the Rams or Texans. I don't remember which, one of the two.
It would be the Rams at 26.
They traded up with the Rams to get him. I like the selection. I don't like trading up for it, and I don't like the fact that you did it right after drafting Walker. And then you took 2 safeties. I don't understand why they would double up twice in this class. And the Falcons have an issue with doubling up, apparently. They did it with Penix and Cousins. They did it with Walker and Pierce. They did it with Watson Bowman. I give up.
Lots of question marks, but I like the overhaul. I think they needed some fresh names in on that defense. I think with good coaching, it works out. I think, yes, trading up for Pierce and giving up a first next year.
Unreal. Unreal.
Yeah, I would have hung up the phone
That's a
immediately.
Noah level fleece. Like
Shout out Noah Willard.
Noah Willard, one of our buds, who is fantastic at fantasy football and will steal your lunch money.
Please, Bijan Robinson for a late first and a second next year.
Because Noah starts talking to people and they're just like, "What if I gave you everything?"
He must be like.
It makes me so mad, dude.
You
Every
remember
time.
Remember that snake in the Jungle Book that had like it was like the viper with like the squiggly eyes, and he would hypnotize you? That's Noah.
And it's like guys that I'm trying to trade for too, and I'm giving them better packages, and they're like, "But what if I traded him to Noah for significantly less?" I'm like,
Every time I trade with this kid, I'm just like, I'm terrified because I know I'm getting good value. I know I'm almost winning this trade. That it's really fair. I'm still scared. I'm still anxious to hit accept.
Anyway, back to the Falcons.
I told you, giving him 102 and 103 is scary.
Trade for 103. I like what I got for it.
Yeah. Sneaky good as well if they hit. That is a big if on most of these picks.
And do we trust the Falcons to develop? I don't.
I don't, but I'm going to give them some time. So I gave it a B, but it could be a B- because of the trade.
Yeah, I gave it a C-. And guys, honestly, that back half saved it for me because I think Watts is really good value. I think Bowman's good as well at that spot. And they needed safety. They just need, honestly, defense overall, but DBs especially. So, that's good. And Bowman can be moved around a little bit, like he can play some slot. But I mean, we've talked about it. Like, I'm just a little bit lower on Walker. I had him at 26 in my final big board. So, I think that's a little bit of a reach, especially with guys like Shamar Stewart still on the board. And then that trade, guys, oh my goodness. You
Yeah.
gave up a first round pick for James Pierce Jr., who I see as a situational pass rusher. Like, man, now, because of what you gave up for him, like, we're looking at a guy who should be at 15 sacks a year because you're drafting him at 26 and then also giving up another first. And I know they got a third back. Like, I understand that. But still, just the value of that next year first, not a good trade in my book. And so it gave it a C minus. Again, honestly, the back part of it is what saved it for me after not loving either of those two selections in the first round.
I love the Walker pick. I understand why they would trade back up for Pierce Jr. And I love Watts. I love Bowman. I think this is a very good draft with those four guys. I don't understand the redundancy. But granted, it was redundancy at positions of desperate need. So I give this draft a B+, and I think it could have been an A or an A- if it wasn't redundant and if the trade hadn't sucked. The Arizona Cardinals, one of my favorite draft classes in this draft. Fantastic work all in all, and I think Jonathan Gannon is going to have a very good roster to work with. Walter Nolan 116, Will Johnson 215. Fantastic. Those are A-level selections for me. A-, A+ for Nolan and Johnson. Jordan Birch, another A selection for me at 314. Cody Simon. Denzel Burke, B-, dude. That's a fantastic pick. And then a 6th and 7th rounder, Hayden Connor and Kitten. Kitan?
I think it's Kitten Crawford.
Kitten Crawford? Dang, dude. That is a brutal name to have. That's nasty. I give this draft an A, plain and simple. I love it. I think that this completely reworks their defense. You have now an edge rusher, a linebacker, a corner, a linebacker, 2 corners, an edge rusher, and an interior guy who can mess stuff up, dude. Paired with Josh Sweat, paired with Jonathan Gannon, who we know can coordinate a good defense. Not in the Super Bowl, though, and I still have beef with him for that. I love it.
I'll blame it on the grass.
It's not the grass. It was the fact that Jonathan Gannon already had the job with the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm really mad that he just did not care about the Super Bowl.
It could have been Patrick Mahomes.
Nah.
But yeah, some home run hits here.
Bradbury.
Hit the nail on the head. A. If I had to put it into a number range, I think this is the 3rd best class out of all 32 teams.
I have 2 A rankings and no A+. This is one of my best 2.
Well, when we talk about that, rating the draft by going off of the consensus boards, the Cardinals are the number 1. Like, they got the best value according to consensus boards. So you guys are not off on that for sure.
Yeah, they got some great options here. I mean, Nolan and Johnson are 2 amazing picks. I did not think Will Johnson would slide that big. Tyler and I always talked about that the knee is the concern, but the talent is there. So I guess teams saw that injury and kind of had a track record with that injury, and not a lot of players come back from that kind of injury. And I said that to you too, that has the data to back it up. But that was the concern there. But if he doesn't re-injure his knee, that's going to be solid pickup right there in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
I'm a little lower on Birch than consensus, but Cody Simon, Denzel Burke, dude, round of applause.
Yeah.
Cardinals.
Yeah, I actually changed. I think I had this as a B, and kind of as we scrolled up to it and I looked at it again, I put it a B+, because I do really like this. I just, the only thing that's holding me back from an A is that I wrote down in my notes, I love all of their first 3 picks as long as Will Johnson's able to play football. And like, by the slide, guys, I'm really worried, because I thought it was just the toe thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But it seems like there's just a lot more there. But as long as he's able to play, that's an amazing pick. But it's just, can you get on the football field and be healthy?
Turf toe has such a long.
It's because it's nasty. It's brutal. Tyler, if I tell you Will Johnson plays 13 out of 18 games in his rookie season, and that number goes up his sophomore season, where do you have this?
Then A, for sure, because Johnson was 6 for me, and Nolan was 22, something like that. Loved Birch. Birch was a top 75 guy for me, so you get him at 78. Love that. Again, and you guys went through it, so I won't do it again, but just really, really like their top 3 picks. If Johnson's good, that's 2 top 25 talents in the first 2 rounds, and on defense where they really need it.
Yeah. I love it. Go Cardinals. Fantastic. Who's up next? Is this the Cincinnati Bengals?
Guys, we're halfway through.
Are we? We're halfway through, and we are an hour 15 into recording.
Okay, let's go. Well, really fast speed run. So the Cincinnati
Boom, boom,
Bengals.
Good job.
Can I get this over to stay? Okay. Cincinnati Bengals. Wow, this was not a great draft. Stewart saved this because I really like Shamar Stewart. But man, Knight, reach. Dylan Fairchild, reach. Barrett Carter, reach. Even Taj Brooks, I was like, take Damian Martinez instead of him in the 6th round. Just really did not like this draft for them very much at all. There were other guys they could have taken. Shamar Stewart's good, though.
He's what's holding this draft up for me. I have it. I'm probably higher than both of you. I have it at a B+ because I do think they addressed a whole bunch of their needs, and I think that they did a good job with that.
Come on, Aaron. All right, I have it as
B+
C-.
is crazy.
Yeah, C- because I feel like with this draft, they weren't making a push for playoffs. And I don't know. That might just be like a point
You're saying
of view
that
thing.
it's too like it's too prospecty and not
Too
enough
long-term future
Yeah.
rather than let's get a win right now. I mean, you just signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to a deal, so I get there is a money issue, and there will be a money issue very soon. Shamar Stewart's going to be the direct replacement for Hendrickson. I love Demetrius Knight, but come on, that was a reach. I will be the first to say that. You got to be really careful with this development because I did not think he would get drafted that high. He's a hard-hitting linebacker that really needs to work on his technical skills. Low risk, low reward kind of a deal. It's just borderline not great.
Tyler, where'd you have it before we move on?
I had it as a D+, but that's not where I had the Seattle Seahawks, who are up next. This is actually one of my favorite
One of mine as well.
drafts. Zabel, perfect fit on the interior. Love that. Helped Sam Darnold out a lot. I was too low on Zabel. I should have moved him up. He ended up being in the high 20s. Probably should have been more low 20s for me. Love the Arroyo pick because
Hey, well, no. We don't skip right over. Don't skip over Nick Emenwari yet. Not just yet.
I was going to let you guys hit on him,
Okay.
leave you something, because I like the Arroyo pick better because he is the perfect complement as a vertical threat to JSN and Cup. And we wondered if they would get that at the receiver position. Like McMillan was mocked to them at 18 sometimes. And would they take Jaden Higgins in the 2nd round? But they did it with the tight end, which is unique. I like that. So let you guys hit on the rest of that. But that was the pick I think that really sold it for me as an A in this draft.
They took your guy Davian Martinez in the 7th round as well. That's just
He's
a
probably
flyer.
taking Charbonnet's spot. I hate to say it.
I can't have that happen. I need Sharps to be good. Nick Emenwari, Mike McDonald gets another rangy, hard-hitting safety. I trust him to install this defense into his head. There's not many guys who I'm just like, yeah, you can have a safety, and I completely trust you with a guy who might not be the most football IQ guy on the field, and Mike McDonald is one of them. I just trust him to use a safety well, and we'll talk about safeties when it comes to the Ravens. But, like, come on. This is going to be fun. And then I think my favorite – maybe not in terms of value, not in terms of grade, but my favorite pick that they made was Jalen Milroe, who is now their QB2. Plain and simple, Sam Howell traded the next day. QB2, straight up, will compete for QB1 at the end of Sam Darnold's contract, and if Sam Darnold sucks, they're going to be able to use him in fun sets. This is fantastic. I love it. This is exactly the kind of situation I wanted Milroe to end up in, and he's going to flourish in Seattle.
I gave it a B-. It was not lackluster, but the very
You were mad
top
they
heavy.
didn't take Jackson.
No, it was
I think-
top heavy. And once they got to the 5th round, I think a lot of those picks didn't really do it for me.
You didn't like Horton? I think Horton's a good
really?
pick.
I was going to say, I love their back end, but you go ahead first.
Yeah, it didn't really do it for me. Horton was fine. Martinez was fine. Ricky White
those
probably
three.
could have been a UDFA. But I
he
agree.
wasn't. They had
Zabel
the-
was
if you
solid.
have the pick,
Emenwari
use
was
it.
solid. Arroyo, vertical threat. Tyler, you hit the nail on the head. But I want to ask a really more important question. They gave a 3rd for Geno to then draft Milroe with that pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
Fine. Because they signed Darnold. Like, if it was just a straight up, our plan now is to play Milroe, not liking it. But
Milroe, if Milroe's a day 1 starter, he is not worth a 5th rounder. But because he is not a day 1 starter, he's worth a 2nd or a 3rd. I love it.
Well, I'm looking forward to the dynasty talk.
I think Milroe's going in the 2nd round in our league, I'd assume. Maybe higher. I love Emanwari. I think that I can't imagine being a small receiver playing the Seahawks having to worry about getting hit by Witherspoon. And if he misses Emanwari, that's terrifying. And I love the idea of it. The Milwaukee Bucks, Tyler, have the
The
floor. brother.
The
Milwaukee
Tampa
Bucks.
Bay Bucks, I think. Is what you meant
I'm
to say.
sorry. Damian Lillard is on the mind.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
unfortunate.
Their
Prayers to him.
franchise is doomed.
I liked this draft. B plus. It's a solid draft. Basically, here's what I went through: is I don't mind Ibuka as Godwin insurance. He can play outside a little bit in the meantime as well. I guess to nitpick, I wish that was our thought process in the second round and not with our first round pick. But then when we actually started making our second, third, fourth round picks, I was like, okay, we found it. Because Benjamin Morrison, man, love that. So instead of going corner, which probably would have been Barron, somebody like that, in the first, you actually take care of it in the second. And then I love the Jacob Parrish pairing with David Walker and Elijah Roberts. These are just intriguing guys to swing at in the third, fourth, and fifth round. Take care of some of that pass rush that we need as well. And then even got Tejas Johnson just as a dart throw and could be a nice yak guy and use him in some sets. So gave it a B plus. Think it'll be great. And then I think especially this was a future draft in terms of, hey, this is Godwin insurance for health. When Mike Evans goes away, we have Ibuka and we have McMillan now in the wings in terms of replacing them.
I gave it a B for the same reason. I was a little lower on Ibuka, not as a player, but as he's now the third or fourth receiver on this team. Behind, I think right now, Evans, Godwin, and McMillan. And if I'm drafting Ibuka, I'm not putting him in my fourth or fifth role. Plain and simple. I love Morrison. I love Parrish. I love the Walker picks. And I think Tez Johnson's at least something. So I do think it's a good class. Just have it as a B.
I think Ibuka is like Chris Godwin 2.0. And I see the vision, but I didn't think he'd go 19. So for that, I don't really know. I'm teeter-tottering on that one. But Morrison, massive steal. Parrish, slightly underrated. Walker was a sleeper I've heard all offseason out of Central Arkansas.
Great FCS player.
Yeah, consensus had him higher than I think the three of us did.
Yeah. Roberts, a disruption in the backfield 24/7. That's just what the Bucks needed. Mr. Lightweight himself, Tez Johnson, yeah, kind of a throwaway. But I'm a little more concerned that they didn't dress linebacker. We always thought that Jahad Campbell was in the mix here. So don't really know what happens there. It just seems like they valued Ibuka a lot higher.
I don't blame
But
him.
I give it an A-. I think it's all around solid, and these will be some cornerstone pieces in years to come. But, dude, Tedsman Watson, can we talk about that real fast?
Yes. 464 pounds of beef to put next to Vita Vea. Here's the deal, guys. This is for the Eagles. If we ever see them in the playoffs again, we're putting Desmond Watson out there, and we're putting Vita Vea out there. You're not moving
UDFA,
them.
right? Desmond Watson.
UDFA Desmond Watson. That's 800 pounds of man in both A gaps. You don't get to move that, and so
Unless Ty Robinson's the fullback.
nah, good luck. Good luck. That's a lot of weight right there.
I love that selection, though. Ty Robinson. I think UDFA is something that not enough people talk about. It is part, if they're right after the draft, it's part of the draft day package, right? We're not going to mention a lot of them. I think we mentioned Restrepo at the beginning and then the big boy just now. But yeah, UDFAs are constantly something to pay attention to. The Denver Broncos needed a running back, and they took RJ Harvey in the second round. Bless you, Ryan.
Oh, sorry. I didn't have time to mute my mic.
Jahdae Barron at 120, RJ Harvey at 228. And then Pat Bryant, Savion Jones. This is a very top-heavy class for me. I'm not in love, and I'm not like I just don't like it. I don't like it anything after Bryant, really. And but I do love Barron and Harvey.
I was going to say, I don't like anything after Barron.
I was going to say Barron, good pick. I had everything else bad, which is why I had it a D. They actually are the third worst in terms of that consensus ranking that we talk about. Because I liked Harvey. Think that was a little bit of a reach where you took him. I liked Pat Bryant. That's a reach where you took him. I liked Savion Jones. That's a reach where you took him. And so I guess that's a constant theme through the whole thing is I don't mind the players they got, more where you took them and that there were better players on the board at those spots.
So that is our new biggest gap from a B that I have it at to a D that Tyler. That is the a 6-spot gap if you count the pluses and minuses in between letter grades.
Yeah, I'm a little bit in the middle. I had it at C minus. Great first pick. Did not have RJ Harvey going in the second on my bingo card,
Love
but a multitude of running backs before
I mean,
him
Caleb Johnson's the biggest
were
one for me.
available.
Like, he was there. Sampson, any of these guys.
And for the most part, I would like to say most of these guys are developmental projects. So
But that's
gonna
the
be
stage
a
they're in right
big-
now as a team. It's a full team of developmental guys.
It's just you're going to have to wait and see on this class.
You're going to have to wait and see on the Broncos. I don't mind that strategy. The Pittsburgh Steelers. It's an interesting class. I have it at an A minus. I just think it's a very Steelers-y class. I do want to kick it off with Derek Harmon out of Oregon, defensive tackle, who tragically, his mother was hospitalized, and then I think it was just
The night of.
the night of, he flew to see her after he was selected, or went to see her, and she passed, I think it was 4 hours or so after he told her, hey, I was drafted to the NFL to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And that is like heartfelt, and I'm getting choked up thinking about it, and it's brutal. And I will be rooting for Derek Harmon for the rest of his career. Love the selection as well at 121.
I would say really good player. I think he fits the Cam Hayward spot like a glove. So whenever Cam Hayward is going to retire, which I would assume is pretty soon, he's getting older. Love that. Also, didn't take a QB at 21, didn't do the Jackson Dart thing. And so I gave them credit for that as well. The rest of these guys, I like the Caleb Johnson selection, and kind of the rest is just mid stuff.
I love the Caleb Johnson selection.
Yep.
It feels fantastic. I think that's their running back of the future.
I love it. I love it. To replace Najee Harris with a guy that I like a lot better. So I gave this overall a B minus because in the back end was just kind of meh. Like, not a lot stood out to me there.
I give it an A minus because I love the Harmon, I love the Johnson selections.
Again, in the middle, B plus. I initially thought it was in the C range. I'm not gonna lie, but they got some great talent. It'll be up to the coaching staff to determine how high their ceiling is and their potential. Sawyer was slept on, and I'm pretty sure Black was Mel's best available player for almost like a whole round
So
or two.
it was him and Shador Sanders just kept being the
Yeah.
Well, Mel had him as in the top 10 of, what was it, edge rushers or D tackles?
D tackles, yeah.
He had him in his like really, really high, and he was on, like, I started taking notes. I was looking at Mel's rankings. I was like, what the heck is this? And then I looked at him and I was, he sucks. Mel's just wrong. And the Steelers spent a 5th rounder. Hilarious that 2 of Mel's favorite players went in the 5th round. Hilarious. The mock draft king. The Los Angeles Chargers are next up on our board. We have, how many teams do we have left? 10? 10 teams left?
Breezing
11.
through it. Breezing through it.
We're gonna truck through this. The LA Chargers, I gave them a B minus. I like this class. There's Omarion Hampton, Troy Harris, 2 offensive weapons. Love that. But other than that, I feel like it's kind of just there.
Gave it a B plus. Love the Hampton pick. Thought they were going to rock with Najee Harris. Now they're not. I think that's a thumbs up for me. And Trey Harris is a better version of Quentin Johnston. Also a thumbs up.
Aaron, I think it's funny. I think it's the first time you and I have agreed on a pick, but B minus. Jim Harbaugh is going out and getting some difference makers. Love the boldness, getting Hampton. I actually can't wait to see him behind that Chargers O-line. I think that's going to be pretty cool. But I don't know where they'll place at the end of the year, but definitely the sleeper team for a deep playoff run, maybe.
I was so devastated to find out that Hampton and Genty were going 1-2 in our draft, where I had the 3rd overall pick.
Tough.
It was really tough. And then I traded back. So now here we are. The Green Bay Packers. This, I think, is going to be not the rapid fire discussion that Tyler wants it to be. Matthew Golden.
I literally have that in my notes too, actually, Aaron.
Matthew Golden. I gave this draft a C minus. One, because I feel like it didn't really address edge except for Baron Sorrell. In the 4th round, I feel like Anthony Belton was 1 a reach, 2 out of not a position of need for them. Savion Williams, waste of a pick. And then Matthew Golden is a number 2 receiver in a room with 6 other number 2 receivers. I don't understand anything that's happening here. And I give this a C minus, one of my worst classes.
So hold on, you have wanted Matt LaFleur to take a first round receiver forever.
Wait,
and then
when did that?
Or like a number 1 type receiver forever.
Yeah, Matthew Golden's not a number 1 type receiver.
I guess we just disagree then.
Plain and simple. Yes.
Golden is what they need. He replaces Watson as a deep threat. Watson's hurt and is just flat out more reliable than any of these guys. None of these guys can you really count on to do the things that what?
Jalen Royals?
All right.
Okay, dude, here we go.
If they had taken Jalen Rose, this is an F for me. Legitimately.
But like he separates better than any of them. He can actually catch the football. Shout out Dontavian Wicks. And then he can get down the field, which they didn't have any of those things now that Christian Watson is hurt. So I think slides right in.
I never said he didn't. I don't understand. This is the year you take a freaking number 2 receiver where there is not a single number 1 receiver available. Ryan.
Teacher, call me. All
Ryan.
Right, so I will say, I'm kind of mad because Green Bay would have been a great pickup for Travis Hunter, but I didn't know the number 2 overall pick was available. Travis Hunter would have been a great pick for Green Bay. Fills the wide receiver need and the corner need.
Yeah, they would just have to give up all of their picks this year to get him.
They would have. Absolutely. But that would have been an amazing fit. I gave it a C. I've literally put in my notes, I know Tyler thinks Golden is some Superman, but very crowded wide receiver room with Golden, and they drafted Savon Williams. So
yeah, but he's not really a receiver. Like he'll be a fun Cordero Patterson type guy.
Well, Belton was a nice pickup. One of my sleepers, Sorrell. It was actually really cool to see him walk across the stage. Top 50 guy for me.
That was awesome. It was fantastic, and that's one of the reasons that this draft is not a failure.
Yeah,
that was
not
really
much
cool.
else to talk about beyond that, but
Green
solid
Bay.
C.
Quietly a fantastic draft destination. Packers fans showed out, and they showed up for their boys. It was great. Ryan, you have a C. I have a C minus. Tyler, you're at, I'm guessing, a B plus because you love Matthew
A
Golden.
B minus because they didn't draft a corner, and that kind of was interesting to me more than anything.
Travis Hunter.
They could have needed Travis Hunter, but I really don't think that was an option. The Minnesota Vikings.
This is an A for Ryan. We'll just get that out of the way.
It's actually not.
I have it at a C plus. I like the Tyrion Ingram Dawkins pick out of Georgia in the 5th round. I like Kobe King in the 6th. Those are 2 sleepers I think could make a serious impact and be starters in the next 2-3 years. Ty Felton in the 3rd was a reach and a bad selection. Donovan Jackson, I liked it. I don't feel like it was their biggest position of need. I think he's a good player and he's going to do well for them. I just don't think they needed to take a guard there when there were other positions available, like corner.
I'm trying to figure out why they didn't have a 2nd round pick. Does anyone know off the top of their head?
Well, they didn't have a lot of picks this year. They
Yeah, it was very lackluster in that regard. But put all your eggs in one basket, hope for the best kind of a deal. And that's exactly what they're doing for J.J. McCarthy. You get a top 5 player in this draft, in my opinion, humble opinion, Donovan Jackson, with some solid studs in the later rounds. Didn't hit a lot of needs, but they're already loaded. It's kind of like the Eagles situation. You don't have a ton of holes to fill.
So it says that the 2nd rounder for their the 24th pick in the 2nd rounder was the Bears, and that is from Minnesota through Houston and Buffalo. I have no idea how it got there. But the only person I know that's related to all those things is Stephon Diggs, and I don't know how that happened. I mean, Houston, Buffalo, and
yeah, that doesn't explain what they lost it this year.
Yeah,
I gave it a B. I'll do some research while you guys talk about the Vikings.
Yeah,
I gave it a C. I gave it a C plus.
Easy B minus for me. Fill out your offensive line.
Perfect range.
Had a lot of picks, but just did decent with what they had.
The Ravens. They keep getting away with this. The Ravens are one of the teams in the NFL that perennially has fantastic drafts.
Aha, found it. Dallas Turner.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yep.
Gotcha. I hope that works out for them. I loved Dallas Turner last year. Jeez, the Cavs beat the Heat by 55.
A lot of points.
Holy cow.
Points. Just like the Ravens, who had a lot of picks, 11 to be exact.
Is that the most in this class, or I think is it tied for the most?
It's tied because I think New England had 11, and I'm not sure if I know the Eagles had a lot too randomly, but
I don't think the
remember.
Eagles had 11. The Eagles traded back at every turn, on like every turn. Then they had 4 6-rounders and 3 5ths. The Ravens had a day. they had their own pick through rounds 1 through 4, and I think they made the most of those. They took Malachi Starks, who Ryan had as a top 10 player, and they're going to pair him with Kyle Hamilton in one of the coolest safety pairings I think we've ever seen. Mike Green out of Marshall, who had, I think it was, I believe it was legal issues, is the reason he slid. They got a top 20 talent in the second round at pick 27 in the second round. Emory Jones from LSU at a position of need with their offensive line being old and their future uncertain. And I just love what they did with those first 3 picks. And Aeneas Peebles in the 6th round is, I think, a fun selection as well. And I gave it a B- because it's a very top-heavy class, but a good top-heavy class.
Guys, we got our first kicker selection.
Woo! I think there's a reason it's the Ravens. We're not going to get into why it's the Ravens.
Oh, yeah.
But there's
gave
a
this
reason
an
it's the
A+.
Ravens.
Guys, A+.
Really?
Whoa.
My,
okay.
oh my. If you told me 2 months ago that you were going to get Starks and Green, I would have said it was impossible because Starks was a top 5 player on my board 2 months ago until we got
Might
to
as
the
well.
film. So this was just some all-around good drafting by the Ravens. I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with this because they didn't have a lot of holes that they needed to fill. And I really hope this gets them over the hump. There's some good value, like Emory Jones in the late third, Vincent, Peebles, all could be steals. So, dude, I'm walking away with this legitimately is the second best draft class, in my opinion.
Gave it an A.
Right ahead the Cards.
I have it a B-, so I guess I'm the lowest of the 3 of us.
Yeah, I
but
gave it an A. Love it. Again, I don't know about the Mike Green legal issues. That's just not something that we get to know right now. But just from the pure on the field talent perspective, that's 2 top 20 talents, and you got them in the first 2 rounds, one at pick 59. And they're at positions of need because the secondary was in flux for the Ravens last year. They had one guy get signed away. I'm forgetting his name now. In free agency. So they had need in the secondary, took care of it. They also had need at pass rusher because they generate a lot of pressure with the sim pressures, but it'd be nice if you just had a guy who could get home. Mike Green can do that for you. And you guys talked about the rest. Overall, just love this draft.
I'm lower than the both of you, but I think that's just because of how top-heavy this class is. But I do think that getting like straight-up value out of their picks, they had their own picks. It was straight-up 127, 227, 327, 427, and I think they got 3 starters in their first 3 rounds. The Detroit Lions had an interesting class. I gave it a C. Tyreek Williams in the first round, I think, fills a need for them as a run-stopping defensive tackle, excuse me. Tate Ratledge in the second, good value, and they're going to get, he's immediately a depth piece and a starter if needed. And then in the third, they take Isaac Tesla. Traded up to take Isaac Tesla. Why? Tyler, you follow college football more than either Ryan and I combined. And plain and simple, I felt like Tesla is not the guy you wanted, especially with guys like, and I'm pulling this up, Jalen Knoll, still available.
Jalen Royals, still available.
Irrelevant. Alec A.R. Manor, who went around later, still available. Savion Williams was right after this. I don't agree with that one, but Arian Smith, Jalen Lane, like there's a lot of receivers who went after this pick, and I don't understand why this guy.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have taken him over, especially Knoll would be the big one out of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have taken him over Royals either, honestly. Like, just those guys are better receivers, in my opinion. What you're betting on is he was 6'4", he was like 210 plus, and had a 9.8 something RAS. So basically, height, weight, speed guy. And you try and figure out if you can polish that up. I think he was also, I can't remember if this was him or not, but he was also a good special teams guy. And so I think maybe kind of the worst case scenario is, hey, he's a really good gunner for us on punt team, which still, I don't think that justifies the selection. I wouldn't have done it, but I think that's kind of the vision that they're looking for.
I gave it a C. I really,
Ryan, we agreed again.
Really wanted to love this class. I know.
We should tell our counselor about that. She'll be proud of us.
I just can't get behind this draft class, guys. I know they have a great track record of developing prospects, but as of right now, this was just very meh in terms of value alone. I hope they prove me wrong, but I guarantee that you didn't need to trade up for Tesla. I don't think he was on anyone's radar. Reaching for Tyreek Williams, Ratledge and Frazier are the only 2 picks I can like kind of get behind. but even Hassan, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Hassanine.
Hassanin,
That's
I think, but I'm not too
Neen.
sure.
I think he honestly could have even still been a 7th round pick. So this is another one of the trust the process, I guess.
Trust the
So
team. Yeah.
yeah,
I gave it a B. I'm way higher on Tyreek than you guys. My comp this whole process was DJ Reader, and do you know who's on this roster and getting older? DJ Reader. And so think that's a really good fit right there. Like Ratledge, like Frazier. Really, basically, I could sum it up. I liked all the picks and then was confused by Tesla. And so I gave it a B.
Yeah. I give it a C. I kind of liked all the picks and was very confused by Tesla, similar to Tyler. Commanders. Needed an edge rusher, didn't really get one, but they did get Josh Connerly with really good value, Trey Amos with fantastic value at a position of major need for them, and then also drafted Jalen Lane, Kane Madrano, and Jackery Krosky Merritt. Heck of a name, who's a running back. But I think I gave this a C+. I really like their top two, and it's I think, thin class, but I think those top two guys are going to be day one starters for them.
well, it's them because they only had 5 picks.
I was
Yeah,
just saying, that's
exactly.
why I gave it a B plus because I wrote down they only had 5 picks, but they made the most of it. Josh Connerly, really good at a position of need. Trey Amos making it a pick 61. Are you kidding me? Like we had this guy going at 26 in some of our mocks. That's
Yeah.
insane value. Again, at a position of need, and I wonder. I can't remember. Are they bringing Lattimore back?
They
Did
are.
they?
I think it's a 1 year. I'll look that up though.
Okay, because if they are bringing him back, I think the best thing that this does, besides you just get a good player, is you put Lattimore on the outside, you put Amos on the outside. Now Sanders still can slide down to slot, which is where he should be playing. It's his natural position. He did good on the outside, but that's I don't think where you want to keep him long term and not where he has the most value. So loved pretty much all their picks. I wasn't Madrano. I'm not going to pretend like I watched film on him, but a lot of these other guys, all 4 of the other guys, I have watched a little bit and really liked value wise what they got.
Let's see. Marshawn Lattimore at the moment is on their. He is, yeah. I think he's just on their roster for at least 1 to 2 years. So plain and simple, he might get cut because he sucks, but for now he's on their team.
I give him a B. It's another one of those sneaky good classes. You kind of teeter-tottering in between grades. It could be a B+, but I gave it a B because I was a little lower on Josh Connerly than the rest of consensus. I had him at 47. So a little bit of a reach there for me, but I do think that this is a good fit. I do think that they invested in their future while still maintaining their competitive edge. Would have loved to see D-end or safety address, but this is a very satisfactory class, and I think Amos and Connerly will blossom here in Washington.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wants to like go through this as an exercise. Who could they have gotten at safety? Who could they have gotten at edge? And look at like the Lane picks, the Madrano picks. I'm just gonna move on. They did good. Be proud. Commanders, you did great. The Bills. I have this as a C+ for plain and simple the Maxwell Harrison pick. They needed a corner, and I feel like they reselected Kyer Elam. I don't like this election, and I gave it a D+ because yes, at a position of need, but it feels like a massive reach, and there were other guys that were better available.
Didn't like the Harrison pick either. I've been lower on him throughout the whole process. Finished at about 60 in my board. I think it was 62 on my board. Just not a first round pick to me. And especially when you had guys like Will Johnson pending the medicals and Trey Amos, even I think I would have liked there more. The rest of the draft was pretty good, and that popped it up to a B- for me.
Yeah, I have it at a B, but I could be convinced it's a B-. Complete overhaul on defense. I agree. Harrison should not have been a first rounder. I had him at 53, so I think I might have been the highest out of the 3 of us, but still not enough to say that he was a first rounder. I think the last few seasons have left a bad taste in Bills fans' mouths with like the atrocity. Ugh. I can not talk once it gets past like 9 o'clock Central Time.
Brother,
it's just funny.
we've been recording for an hour and 50 minutes. You
I
are
know.
so okay.
The atrocity that the Bills fans call defense, Harrison, Sanders, Jackson are all kind of just mid. I thought Sanders was a little bit of a reach. I also had him mid-second round, not early second round. So it's just kind of how the board fell, I guess, in their eyes. It wasn't a need basis thing. It was a value basis thing. like some of the other teams we were talking about. Strong was a favorite of mine until we got to the film, but with great coaching, technical skills will come. Jackson
think-
Hawes could be a sneaky good tight end, but I
Great.
also know their tight end room's already stacked. So it's just a very mid class, but with good development, this could be solid.
I think their tight end room is full. I don't know if stacked is the right word because I think all of them could be on the way out. I like what they've done. I got to be honest, from 3 to 7, I like their picks. Landon Jackson, Deion Walker, Hancock, Hawes, Strong, and Chase Lunt out of UConn. I'm really impressed by those picks. It's just I feel like it's a misuse of their first and second rounder that passed them at a C+ for me. The Kansas City Chiefs, Tyler, they took your guy. They took Josh Simmons at 32. I love it.
We can't do the Chiefs before the Eagles.
I actually had it reverse order, but
Oh, did I mess that up?
well, just the Eagles traded up to 31. So
Right. That's a good point. All right, the Philadelphia Eagles then. Yeah, geez, I just had that completely flipped on my notes. Philadelphia Eagles had the best draft of them all.
they also took one of my guys, so we'll take
They also
that.
took one of your guys. Tyler, as an unbiased party here, would you mind leading this off? Because Ryan and I are both foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, I gave them an A. I can't believe that Campbell fell to them. It's their number 1 or 2 defensive position of need in my eyes, but you can decide between linebacker or safety. I would say linebacker would be number 1 for them, but
And they took safety with the second rounder.
exactly with Makuba. And so the only way this goes wrong, Campbell fell because of the medicals. And so I was like, is there just any way this goes wrong? And then it's for me, if you had Jihad Campbell with some questionable medicals, Nakobe Dean with some questionable medicals, can both those guys stay healthy to pair with Bond? But even in that worst case scenario, it's like you still have Bond. So there's just not a lot wrong with this. There's a lot to like. You get a guy who I had as a top 20 prospect at 31. Boom. Makuba, I love again, fills in that role at safety. Andrew Makuba, safety from Texas. I had him in the 30s. Ryan and Aaron they very much didn't, but now they need to get on board.
Hey, I have been on the Makuba train since day one. If you go back and listen to the safeties episode, anything I said can't be held against me.
I had him at 80.
Yeah. So just really like this draft. You guys can get into some of those later picks as well, because I think there were some good gems in those 6th and 7th rounds. But overall, just it happened where they just draft good players at the positions of need that they have, and it works.
They needed safety, they drafted Makuba. They needed linebacker, they drafted Walker. They needed edge, and they drafted Antoine Powell-Ryland in the 6th, the guy who I think could have been drafted in the 3rd or 4th, reasonably. They did not need quarterback, and yet they drafted Kyle McCord. They needed a tackle, and they needed depth, so they drafted Cam Williams, who is a raw prospect. That is, welcome to Stoutland University, brother. You're going to be great. Ty Robinson, a white D tackle out of Nebraska who played fullback and knows Cam Jurgens in the 4th. They needed a replacement for Milton Williams. They got one. And then they got Mac McWilliams, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I think there were better corners available. But oh well. And then they got another Georgia linebacker because, can never have enough.
Yeah, so A++ if I could, but if I told you that they would get a, in quotes, top 10 player, according to Howie Roseman, a replacement for CJGJ, along with the fastest D tackle in the class that has immense pass rush upside, with a sticky man corner, a Georgia Bulldog, a Jersey quarterback, a replacement for Brandon Graham. Oh, and by the way, 3 offensive linemen for Stoutman University, one of which I had as a top 50 player. It's inconceivable how he keeps getting away with this. So I'm not high on McWilliams, but he did shine at the Senior Bowl and he showed his sticky man coverage. But Tyler, I really hope Makuba pans out. It really fits out nicely for CJGJ's departure to the Houston Texans.
And you know what's the best? Sorry to cut you off, but Makuba is amazing at filling the alley, getting downhill, and then playing over the top. You know what, like, the entirety of the Eagles scheme is? That. He gets to be rangy, make plays on the ball, and then he gets to get downhill in the alley and make really hard tackles. Boom. This is the perfect spot for him, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So I actually watched some of the press conferences and a lot of the coverage. So because I'm an Eagles fan, Jihad Campbell, they're not really going to put him at a certain position right now. I think they're going to try to transition him again to edge. He was a edge and wide receiver in high school, transitioned to linebacker, and then is supposedly transitioning back to edge. So he's probably going to add a few pounds. Or if Dean's not ready for the season and they don't like Trotter, then he might slide into that linebacker role for a bit. But the plan is to put him at edge. But Antoine Powell-Ryland, I think, is a great pickup because it directly replaces Brandon Graham. It's just two similar play styles, big sack artist. Guys, this, I would like to put it with the all-time draft classes, but I know that might be a reach right now. But visit this back maybe in like 5 years, this could go down in the history books.
It could.
Because I've already seen Kyle McCord is possibly a contender to take over Tanner McKee's QB2 spot.
One last thing I wanted to. Oh, actually, I don't. I love Tanner McKee.
I do too.
One thing I want to mention: Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming out of Florida, 5'10", 210, and for the Eagles, he was playing strong safety. Andrew Makuba, 5'11", 186. So he is a little smaller, but he is the same weight. Believe he's the same weight as Chauncey is now. Too. Chauncey lost some weight in the league. This is a direct replacement. At least Andrew Makuba is a direct replacement to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Jihad Campbell is going to play alongside Zach Bond and be the Nakobe Dean insurance should Dean not be healthy. Ty Robinson replaces Milton Williams. This is how you run a team. And I don't understand. This is my best draft in the league. Like, I don't understand Howie Roseman.
You can't keep getting away with it.
That's exactly what it is. And I don't want to be a Glazer. Like, that's the thing. Everyone's like, you keep glazing Howie Roseman just because he went with consensus. Yeah. Because he keeps taking the best player available. He took a top 18 guy at 31. He took Tyler's favorite safety in the class, not named Malachi Starks, in the second round. Ty Robinson fits beautifully, like a freaking glove. And then he took 2 long shots in the 6th round that I think realistically could pan out in Williams and Powell-Ryland. Love.
This team won't miss a step.
We need to move on or else people are going to get mad at us. I mean, they are. If you listen for this long, bless your heart. Houston Texans. No, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are up next. Tyler, they took your guy. This time.
They did. A lot of whiplash here is what I wrote down because I love the Simmons pick. He was a top 10 player for me. The only thing that I think held him back was that patella injury he suffered, but he was doing drills at his pro day and looks like he's fine. So top 10 guy, think he's really good. And he's a tackle. Almost all of these guys, we were like, are they tacklers or guards? Simmons is a tackle. And he'll play tackle in the league for the Chiefs. That's something they need so bad after Suamatia. It seems like he's going to try and move into guard. So, but then they took Norman Lott. Didn't love that. But then the rest I really did like. And so I ended up giving him a B+ because of the Simmons and then pretty much anyone else. Brashard Smith, even in the 7th round, I thought he would be taken a little bit higher. Royals at pick 133. I think that's good value as well. I think we disagree on this, me and Ryan, but I think he's a little skill redundant to what they have. But they just need guys. Like, they just need anybody. And so if they were someone like the Lions who already has a bunch of weapons and they did this, I would be a little more mad. But they just need juice. And they just need guys that are good with the ball in their hands. And so even if that is kind of Rashee Rice, I'll still take it.
I think we agreed on that point. I never wanted Royals to go to the Chiefs because I did think that they didn't need him.
Right.
But holy crap, guys, the value? He was my 11th best player in the class.
Oh, we know.
And I guarantee you.
I'm so excited to be done talking about him because I feel like every time I want to argue with you that he's brought up. And I need.
Oh, you won't because.
I need to stop.
He needs to be hammered in these dynasty drafts because he's going to go off.
Are you going
to crowded wide receiver room?
Are you going to stick to your guns and draft him in the 1st round of dynasty because that's what he should be doing? He's a top 11
That's
player.
what I should be doing, but I'm not because I know
because you're scared and you don't believe it.
No, because no one else will.
I was gonna say I messed around. I did a mock just to see like what players I might be in the range for. And Royals went in the 4th round.
It's not been updated yet, though. By the way, so
with
the ADPs, they're
interesting.
off.
But yeah, Royals went in the 4th round, and I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, I want to hear something really unhealthy. Is I downloaded a mock draft app for Dynasty, and I was doing it in between. I was doing it in between sets in the gym, like consistently, and switching around my picks based on what trades I was talking to. It's bad. It's real bad. I like the Chiefs draft. I gave it a B. Where are you guys at?
B plus.
Ryan?
I gave it a B. I didn't like some of the middle round picks. I think they could have done better, but started strong, finished strong.
Yeah. Houston Texans. These are the teams that traded out of the first round. So now, are you guys good with Texans? Ready
Yeah,
to go?
Texans works. Let's do it.
All right. They have the Iowa State receiver room is now the Houston Texans receiver room. They took Jaden Higgins in the second round with 2-2 after trading out of the first round. And then they took Ariante Ursery at 216, Jalen Noel at 315, Jalen Smith at 333, Woody Marks, who I love his story. Isn't his name Quantravius, I think? Oh,
Yeah.
And then he goes by Woody because he loved Toy Story as a kid. I love stories like that. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Chop Robinson, fantastic.
Yep.
And then they took Jalen Reed, not Jaden Reed, out of Penn State. I think this class is very top-heavy, and it kind of cuts off at Marks. But the Higgins and Knoll thing is where I'm at. Then I'm confused by it.
So I think they fit with Nico Collins very well.
But it feels like you're writing off Tank Dell.
That's what I was just about to say. Is I think they're telling us that Tank Dell is not coming back super healthy.
Yeah.
So, writing might be on the wall there because Noel fills that spot and Higgins takes that outside spot. Collins is obviously going to be on the field. So, I gave this a C because while I do like that, and I like that pairing a lot, dude, I know they got Ursery. Ursery is a little more of a developmental project. They need guys on the offensive line now. And so
Yes.
I didn't love that. And I had Ursery in that range. So it's not a reach. It's not anything like that. But just I think the type of prospect he is doesn't fit what they need. So I gave this a C, even though I like the top 3 players they took. I don't know if it was what they needed.
I have it at a D+, which is one of my 3 lowest. Because I think they wasted picks after Knoll with Smith, Marks, Reed, and then Graham Mertz out of Florida. Tyler, you just took a bite of something, so I apologize for putting you on the spot there.
No, you're good. I'm back. I actually was thinking about this. So if CJ Stroud, if we're talking about like the type of prospect that CJ Stroud is, if Stroud is a 10 on that scale, Graham Mertz is like a 3 or a 4. So I guess I see that vision where he's really accurate.
They have a similar style.
Yeah, because so he's really accurate. Doesn't have as good an arm as Stroud. Throws with anticipation, but not as much as Stroud. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. Where they're pretty similar, but he's obviously just not as good.
If Stroud is the Louis Vuitton bag, he's the Walmart brand.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Ryan, where are you at on this class?
I have a C-. So I'm again in between
Bridging
you
the
two.
gap. No.
But I like Higgins and Noel back together. It's kind of funny because they already have Hutchinson. But guys, they had one of the worst O-lines in football last season. And you come out with Ursery.
One offensive lineman.
Who I also had 73 in the class. So I'm not mad. I'm more
Disappointed.
baffled by the fact that they thought that they could get away with that, and no one would notice.
These guys better get open quick.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and they drafted Jaden Higgins, who's not he's not a top end speed guy, and neither is Collins.
Yeah, and Joe Mixon, don't get me wrong, still thought he was one of the best running backs in the league at the beginning of last year before the lanes just closed. But I don't really know what their plan is there. So if they really want to run it back, they better sign some guys in free agency and fast.
The only thing that the Texans could do that would make me feel like, okay, yeah, I'll bet on you to win the division is if they sign like Jeff Stoutland. That's just about it, though. Or one of the Callahans. And
they lost Kenyon Green to the Eagles. I don't think that could have been a better draft all around.
I don't think that was a loss for them. I think that they ruled that as a net positive because getting him out of there seemed, by all reports, that his time in Houston was over. The Los Angeles Rams. This is my worst class of them all. I gave this a D-, and that's the lowest grade I have.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't stand it. I think it's bad. Straight, plain and simple. The only pick that I thought was good value and good drafting for need was Chris Paul Jr. in the 5th. Terrence Ferguson was a reach. Josiah Stewart was a waste of a pick, and then some. Jarquez Hunter, I mean, that's very Ramsey, but I wouldn't have done it. Ty Hamilton. Cool. You didn't need anybody else on the interior, in my opinion. And then your 7th rounder, it's a 7th round pick. I'm not going to get on you for that. But, I feel like from rounds 2 to 5, from Ferguson to Hamilton. I just don't understand the thinking in the players. There were better tight ends available at 214, and there were better edges available at 326, and I think Stewart was a waste of a selection.
I gave their picks a C, but the trade is where I get to bump them up to a B, because just the fact that they got a first for next year, because here's what I think they're doing. I think they're drafting a quarterback next year.
They should.
Because Stafford they have for 2 years. So if they throw out your name, Garrett Nussmeier, Lenora Sellers, whoever you want in that 26 class, Drew Aller, then they got a year to build him up in the McVay system behind Matthew Stafford, one of the most consummate pros at the quarterback position. So there's just that plan that they have in place, and maybe they don't do it, right? But I think they're signaling that they're going to load up because their first won't be good enough to get a quarterback next year. But the Atlanta first might be, or they could trade to package it and get up there. So
it's the first full season of Michael Penix. We don't know what to expect, really.
Right, exactly. Like, I mean, Atlanta's a volatile team, in my opinion, especially if some of the picks that they took at edge miss. And so because of that,
Shamar and Pierce are two volatile selections.
Yeah, Walker and Pierce.
Right.
So I put their picks are a C because I would have loved Arroyo there instead of Ferguson, and we can go down the whole list if we wanted to, but the trade bumps it up to a B for me to get that first.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the trade. So they sent the 26, the 101 in exchange for the 46, which was Ferguson, and then 242, which is a 7th rounder, and a 2026 first. So, yes, I do think that they would use that first to trade up. I still think that this was just a bad draft class. And, heck, take away Ferguson, it's even worse. I don't know who or what they were thinking in the first round if they kept that pick, but it was just bad. And you think back to last season, they were one play away from making the NFC Championship. And this draft just not make them get better at all across the board. Ferguson was reach. So was Stewart. Hunter is a different flavor in the backfield, and I low-key like it for like fantasy purposes, and we talked about that off the air with Corum and Kyron Williams. Guys, this is just downright bad. I gave it a D. I think we will look back on this class and maybe next year, and they'll just regret everything.
I'd love to be wrong on Ferguson. I'd love it. I think good tight ends are few and far between, and I'm so okay with being wrong. I just don't know if I am. Do you guys want to know, off the dome, who was the pick right after Terrence Ferguson?
Who's the team?
47. That's Will Johnson, wasn't it?
Wow, Tyler.
Oh, my. way to pull that out.
Will Johnson, and then Ariante Ursary, and then Elijah Arroyo in between. There was Demetrius Knight as well, but we're ignoring him. Nick Scorton, Ben Morrison, Anthony Belton, Trey Harris at the 23rd pick.
I don't think they would have gone Scorton, though.
They could have gone.
They needed a corner.
They could have gone Harris. They could have gone Johnson,
which they didn't get in the whole.
They could have gone. They could have gone Morrison.
Morrison was available, I think.
It makes
too.
okay, but
Amos too.
I'm just gonna rip off players that I would have taken instead of Ferguson. Johnson, Arroyo.
I might cut you off though because I feel like this is horrible content and I want to go to the thoughts.
It might be.
I could probably give you 32 players right now ahead of Ferguson.
Hey, I think Trey Harris is the last one I'll stop there with. The
go.
other LA team took Harris. Jack Besh would be even a question mark that the Raiders took, and I'd be like, you know what? Whatever. Take your Cooper Kupp replacement. I don't care. It has been over 2 hours of recording plus breaks.
Yippee.
Thank you all for listening. That was a heck of a draft season. We still got shows to do. We got to talk about Dynasty. We got to talk about some of the guys next season. I think there's a lot of stuff we got to talk about. We got to predict Rookie of the Year off the dome, which is going to be an interesting thing. It's Cam Ward.
Hot take. Go.
Hot take about what? This class?
Off the dome. Go.
I don't have any hot takes right now. All my hot takes are gone. We've been recording for 2 hours.
Right. Hot take: Josh Simmons would be the best tackle in this class.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a hot take, but
hot take: Matthew Golden will be a wide receiver 1.
Also,
they're gonna make him the wide receiver 1 by default, but that doesn't mean.
Hot take: Tyleik Williams will have a better career than Kenneth Grant.
Hot take: best fantasy value in this entire draft, Colston Loveland.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that one and stole it, but I love that one. All right, thank you all for listening. We're gonna get the heck out of here. I need to go to bed. It is 10:30 Eastern, and that's late. Mind the gap on your way out, y'all.